Everybody, welcome. It is Sunday afternoon. It's 2 p.m. Central here on August 25th, 2024. I'm Matt Dillahunty. Joining me this week, Erika Gibbon. How are you?
Man, I'm well. I'm psyched to be here. My voice is actually a little bit lower than normal. I was celebrating my brother-in-law's birthday last night, so I was out yelling into the early hours of the morning. So I'm ready to get rowdy. I'm psyched.
I'm not ready to get rowdy. For lots of reasons. I'll give the quick update. We don't need to drag on. On Wednesday, I had the first of what will be 2 or 3 oral surgeries. And basically they yanked about, a dozen teeth out of my mouth in preparation to completely replace a lot. But he nicely left stuff in the front so that, it doesn't look like I got a big hole in my mouth, which is nice. And I am on pain meds, but that's not the reason I'm in super Zen mode today. As a matter of fact, if I wanted to, if I wanted to get riled up, I could easily get riled up, and you might see it. But my goal is to be so chill and to make such liberal use of the mute button to foster productive conversations where people aren't talking past each other, through each other, around each other, over each other, or butting heads. That Erika looks like the bad cop.
Not possible.
I think you're probably correct. You're probably correct.
I'm gentle and modern to such a degree that I'm harmless, positively harmless.
We will see if that remains true. This is one of many shows on the Line Network. In addition to this show at 2 p.m. Central, there will also be a Sunday show after dark, which I believe tonight is Eve and Seth Andrews. So how cool is that? I mean,
pretty sweet.
I got work to do tonight, but I might just be like, oh, my mouth hurts so bad from the surgery that I should just sit around and watch Seth and Eve tonight. I should probably do stuff.
Doctor's
like
orders.
Yeah,
doctor's orders. You have no choice. The way I see it, you simply must sit down and indulge in this show.
Well, if I can't talk to the doctor directly, I'll just go with the nearest scientist telling me that I need to relax. Monday's Skeptalk at 6 p.m. Central is going to be Shannon and Paul. Tuesday's Chewed Gum is Alyssa and Eve. Wednesday's Hang Up, I will be here with Will Judy, who's the Texas State Director for American Atheists. We're also going to be talking about some other stuff related to American Atheists then. And Thursday's Transatlantic Call-In Show, which will be at 2 p.m. Central, will be hosted by Arden and Luxander. That's the upcoming shows here on the network. Just in case you were wondering, this is a live call-in show. And the goal of this is to actually have people who believe differently from Erika and I. And Erika and I probably aren't going to agree on everything, but we're going to agree on a bunch of stuff. If you've got a God belief, a supernatural belief, something that is contrary to the scientific consensus, anything like that, you can call in and make your case, or maybe there's something that you were confused about. Erika's real fucking smart, and I dropped an F-bomb in the beginning of the show. Somebody's going to cry. But there's an opportunity there for us to potentially teach something, or even more importantly, for us to be taught if we have missed something. Because the one thing that I know is that, as far as I can tell, everybody here who works on the Line Network is perhaps not the most obsessive learner, but is a sincere learner wanting to, hey, if we're wrong about this, let's know. And what's the process by figuring this out? So if you have God beliefs or supernatural beliefs, get your calls in 720-619-2288. There's a web link down below in the description so that you can call from your web browser on your cell phone. I will remind you, if you're on your cell phone and you use the web browser to call in, remember that this is a cell phone. And so it's designed to work as a phone, and your browser will go to sleep. And so if you've been sitting there on hold for 20 minutes and then we bring you in, you can talk and we may not be able to hear you because the web client will go to sleep and mute your microphone. It's really easy. If you hear us start to address you and a change in that, make sure your phone's awake. You may have to tap on the browser to refresh it. I'll probably mention that a couple times. The other thing is make sure you mute the show, and so that we don't have ourselves in a loop. And please, there is always going to be a delay. There's a delay between myself and Erika. It's just the nature of this. And, we're doing our best to make sure that we're managing that delay. But also for callers, I will probably use the mute button quite a bit just to make sure we're not fighting for this. So if you hear a beep or a change in the audio, that's not us hanging up. That's us muting to make a point. And because we have 6 or 7 people on the line most of the time waiting, I want to make sure that the conversations are productive and that we're not spending a lot of time talking in circles or, banging heads. Outside of that, I don't know, Erika, did you have any announcements or anything that you wanted to hit?
Man, shoot. No, you hit all the topics. I mean, call in about science stuff. Call in if you got questions on evolutionary theory, you got questions on Bigfoot or ghosts or anything like that. Anything that we can talk about empiricism and the way that we, science as a way of knowing how we can actually figure some of this stuff out. Call in, let's chat about it. As Matt said, if we're wrong about something, we want to know. Being corrected is the first step towards being a little bit more right. So call in, bust our chops. Let's hash it out. Yep. It should be super fun. And since Matt is in charge of the the mute button, I imagine this will be an extremely productive series of conversations. How could it not be? So call in. We're psyched.
By the way, somebody came into my my Twitch channel the other day, and it's interesting when I'm streaming on Twitch what kind of questions I get. But I do the Sunday shows, and they're primarily about religion. Things along that line. And then I do my Wednesday night show where it's more politics. And lately I've been getting people asking questions about political stuff left and right. So here we are waiting for religious stuff. And our first call for today is actually about religion and politics. So Brian from New York, welcome. You are on with Erika and Matt. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing good. How you doing?
Not too bad.
Oh, that's good. No, I just kind of wanted to go on a rant about both because I kind of see like their mentality is pretty much the same between the MAGA people and the religious people.
So, and I don't think this is really the show for rants.
Oh, I mean, I just kind of wanted your opinion and maybe help me understand how they arrive at their conclusions.
Sure, we can give that a shot. Although I will say that. Well, the frustration that I've had lately with people, in particular, Trump supporting MAGA folks, is I have no idea for any of them, including the ones who try to tell me what goes on in their head that puts them in that mindset. There are some exceptions. If you are a single issue voter and all you care about is abortion or something like that, then it makes sense to me why someone would pick Trump over Harris. Outside of that, apart from asking them, I really don't know. But what's hitting you the hardest, Brian?
Okay, well, yeah, that was kind of where I'm at. Like my brain cannot comprehend this. I mean, basically, like the other night, you remember when Harris did her speech, and I thought she was amazing for her acceptance speech. And I get up in the morning, and all I'm seeing are all these ranting posts. I didn't watch it, but she's a liar. Which to me begs the question: if you didn't freaking watch it, how do you know she lied?
Yeah, right? I think. And I mean, have you heard of the dead internet theory?
I have not.
Okay, let me run through this real quickly. I do not agree with this, and I do not think that it's true, but I think that it's true enough. The dead internet theory is the proposition that bots and trolls and AI and automated content generation have reached a point where clickbait and anger is what drives interaction. And so a good chunk of what you're seeing, if not the overwhelming majority of what you're seeing, is not genuinely people presenting, here's why I don't like Harris. It's non-people. It is, the mass troll, the bot farm type thing. And so I've stopped. I don't reply to accounts that I don't know anymore. I'm less and less on social media every single day because I have no good reason to think, especially in my position where I have, a massive following, that any random individual I don't know that I'm communicating with is sincere and real, because those are both problems. After Kamala's speech, I didn't see the things that you saw. And that's the other aspect of this that's not really a part of dead internet theory, but what your feed gets populated with by Facebook, Twitter, et cetera, how the algorithms that go through and decide that, it's in part based on your interactions. And so if you're the type of person that's more likely to go out and engage with MAGA-minded people, that's what the algorithms are going to feed you more of. I tend to not do that anymore. Where are you at, Erika?
So, yeah, I'd like to add to that for sure. As someone who is still on Twitter, unfortunately, I love fighting with people online, and Twitter is a great place to do that. It's becoming less and less so because of exactly what you're talking about. My feed is clogged with just provocative content, and I think, with regard to the dead internet theory, Twitter is enabling that in a way that is within their terms of service, right? Like, they are explicitly saying that you make more money effectively the more people interact with the content that you post. So there's this massive incentive to post clickbait, rage bait, interaction bait content, stuff that's like so absurd that you start to see some of these accounts that used to post like maybe not decent stuff, but pretty milquetoast stuff, right? Like there are a couple of accounts that I used to follow, like that are kind of cool science clips or whatever, or interesting creepy content or whatever, like stuff like that. And they're posting things these days that'll be a conspiracy of the giants that they found in Iraq, right? Like what even is that? What's creepy about that? What kind of content? And the whole point, it'll be with the caption something along the lines of like, what really happened over there, right? So it's not explicitly saying that this is what we think, but it's baiting you into saying, what a dumb thing to propose. Of course, there weren't giants in the wars over in the Middle East. Like there weren't actual giants involved. That's not something that anybody thinks. But nevertheless, Twitter is incentivizing that to a massive degree. So we're seeing more and more and more of it. And the angrier it makes you, the more likely a lot of us are to interact. I think I would count myself in that. So even if it's not strictly speaking dead internet, it's a lot of people who are intentionally just trying to piss you off to get you to interact with no motivation or they don't actually plan on having a genuine conversation with you. It's bad faith from the get-go. So to that point, I think that we're looking at a really hostile landscape on a lot of social media, and I find myself every single day starting to pull more and more away from it. I think that there's an aspect of it as well that's alarming as far as what it suggests you, because like what Matt was just saying is true, right? When you interact with things, it gives you more content like that. But Twitter, at least, is starting to push content even if you pause over it for too long. So even if you stop to read something and you're like, whoa, what did that just say? And then it turns out to be some of the most heinous shit you've ever seen in your life, it's going to start suggesting more of that to you. And that's how you end up with this, like, even an account like mine, which I mostly like ape and monkey videos and like science stuff papers. And then I interact and dunk on creationists every now and again. But I end up with all sorts of different, alt-right conspiracy theories or like gore on my timeline, just because I'll be scrolling through and I'll be like, whoa, what did that just say? Oh God, that's the most heinous thing I've ever seen. Scroll past it. And so the end result is just a really the enshittification of the internet, really. I mean, it just gets worse absolutely everywhere, from bots to bad faith actors. So I empathize with you for sure. And I would encourage you, when you're seeing a lot of this stuff that's just really starting to make your blood boil, because it's so clear that they didn't even watch Harris's speech, take a step back and say to yourself, these people they don't even really think what they're saying here online half the time. And the other half of the time, it's oftentimes bots. So try not to let it get to you so much. It would be my advice.
Okay, right. I mean, I'm understanding what you're saying, and I'm hearing you, but I mean, then it's like, when I pose the question, just name one lie. The following response is a non-punctuated, incoherent rant that calls me pretty much every name in the book. And I mean, this is what scares me, though, because this is half the country. I mean, if there's just a few of them, I just laugh at it. It'd be laughable if it wasn't so scary. There's so many of them.
I think I agree with Matt here, right? Like, I don't think it's half the country. I think you're seeing a lot of really extreme loud voices online, and they really piss you off and they really make you worried. But, when you interact with these people, like, for instance, again, my brother-in-law came up for the weekend. It was his birthday. So I saw a lot of extended family and things like that. And we have differing opinions. And I have family members who get, force-fed misinformation. And I'm sure I'm seeing a lot of misinformation on my end as well. But so we get to sit there and hash it out and say, okay, like, when someone says something like, oh, all Harris does is lie, which no one did, but there were things that were analogous to that. And we got to sit there and, okay, let's go down the rabbit hole. Let's actually see what was said. And my family's for the most part pretty reasonable. So when we found out that something was not accurate, we were all like, huh, okay. And then we meet in the middle and say, oh, this disinformation is really pissing everybody off. So I would caution you to apply what you're seeing on Twitter to the entire, half the population. I think that's kind of what this rage bait wants you to think, at risk of sounding a little conspiratorial myself. But it's like, division is good for these kinds of accounts. That's what they want.
Yeah, I think
I'm sorry.
No, when I was saying that it's probably go ahead.
I was gonna say, maybe maybe not half the country, but I mean, it's a significant amount, I would think.
What amount is it?
I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, they're
Then how do you know it's significant?
Sure. I would say, I mean, based on the numbers that Trump had gotten last election and as far as votes, I mean, that was a significant amount, and I guess I'm just assuming that it's got to be at least near that.
Well, the fact that somebody gets votes doesn't mean that those are the people that you're interacting with who are dishonest, screeching trolls. There's a huge chunk of people who are just going to vote for whoever has the R next to their name while ignoring absolutely everything else. They don't know about policies. They don't care about policies. They're not engaged online. It's the people who are terminally online. It's a mistake to think that represents half the country. There's a recent poll that I've cited about, 20 times, where 49% of people polled thought that unemployment was at a 30 to 50 year high when it was at a 30 to 50 year low. Now, that's just an issue of fact that people are wrong about it. But that 49% that was absolutely wrong about unemployment, what portion of those are going to be online immediately accusing Kamala of lying when she didn't? What portion of those are going to be engaged in, let me call you names and shut you down? That's the problem, is that the internet breeds shit conversations from some people who may be real and sincerely confused, some people who may be trolling, some people who may be not even individual people, but bot accounts spewing stuff in order to, as a sort of social experiment to see how much can I impact the world. And I don't know that you, Brian, or me, or anybody else has the data to tell us how significant this is. We can't even at this point really trust polls, although I will say the newest polls have Kamala winning in, was it 58 out of 100 cases right now? But that could all change anytime. And that data is based on who actually answers the phone, says, yes, I'll participate in this poll. And so by default, the results are going to be skewed and biased. And it's the job of statisticians and pollsters to both know and understand how to tailor their questions, but also to know when they've got a representative sample or a largely representative sample. What I can tell you is that I'm not convinced that Brian or me or Erika or anybody on the planet has sufficient data to conclude that their interactions on any particular social media is representative of any significant portion of the population.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair point. It sure is. I mean, I got to give you that. It just, I mean, it gets frustrating. That's why, and maybe I should,
Yes.
like she said, don't let it get me so frustrated. Because I mean, I honestly, I go online and it's like you said, you're willing to learn something. If somebody's got something you don't know, or I'm completely open to changing my mind if someone's got, a valid point. And it just gets so frustrating, just, with all the ranting and raving.
Well, and I
But
think
I guess,
the terminally online aspect of it is really what throws us all through a loop, right? I mean, the phrase "touch grass" gets thrown around a lot these days, and I honestly think there's something to it. I mean, sometimes it's better for your mental health after being in the trenches on Twitter or Facebook or whatever, to take a step back and think to yourself, okay, like, is this actually representative of, as you said, 50% of the nation? I would propose no, not even close. And I think that's a good thing. And it's also, in a lot of ways, it can be a little bit concerning too, because as Matt said, a lot of people are going to cast their vote on the basis of what letter is next to the candidates' names. And they don't really think much further than that. And that's because people make a lot of, I think, incorrect assumptions about parties. That it's like, okay, well, if they're Republican, they're going to be better for the economy. And if they're Democratic, they're going to be, or Democrat rather, they're going to be better socially, right? And while I think that there are generalizations that you can make about both of those statements, right? It's not that simple. And I think that's bared out in a lot of ways. But what I'm saying to you is, like, don't panic, don't freak out. The situation is bad, right? But it's not as bad as Twitter would
Right.
make you think. It's not as bad as Facebook would make you think. People are not that I mean, they're pretty polarized, but it's not that bad, I would say. Don't get doomery on us,
Okay, yeah, I'm hearing you. I mean, you're making sense. And I
Good.
mean, I guess, that's pretty much, what I had. I mean, other than, I kind of see the religious people as the same mentality. They do the same thing, but the same things would apply with them, I suppose.
I think so, and I think that there's definitely a link there. I mean, especially now more than ever, people are kind of trying to find ways to tie a lot of their political identity to their religious identity, right? And there's a lot of mental gymnastics that goes on to try to make that work. And I've unfortunately, again, you see a lot of it on social media, So
Right.
I get the frustration
That's
for
it. I
sure.
mean, it's the mental gymnastics that, I just say to myself, are you serious right now? Really? I mean, if you got to like jump through hoops and it's got to be Tuesday and at a full moon to make your claim true, you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I saw one the other day that was like, oh, go ahead, Matt. Go ahead.
I'm just saying, Brian, I get your frustration. I'm just trying to give some sort of balance here. If you don't think I wake up every day ready to pull out my hair again at the fact that I wake up every day in a world where there's even a question, like, I don't understand the bizarro world I wake up in where Trump is even a viable candidate. Even if you didn't consider everything that has taken place right up to, in attempting to incite an insurrection, even if you just looked at the character of the individual and what he said and ignored the 4 years he was president and ignored January 6th, the fact that he's a candidate and it's even close, I genuinely don't grasp the world. And one of the things that this has made me struggle with, in addition to all of the trolls and people who call in, is my mindset is, as a skeptic, as a humanist, my best tools are to present valid and sound arguments, to cite data instead of people, and that if you present the best case based and supported by the best evidence, that should win out. Or at a minimum, if you fail to present an evidence-based case, you should not be in competition with those who are trying to present an evidence-based case. Every day I wake up completely failing to understand how the world is this way. And all I can do is keep doing what I've been doing.
Fair enough. I mean, that was basically my point and through all of this was I just don't get it. How is this even an option? But so I'm with you there.
Yep. I don't know.
No, but
right,
I mean, I guess don't let it get to me.
Well, you may not be able to let it get to you, but you might be able to ease how much it's going to get to you. But Brian, I got to move on to other calls. Thanks.
Fair enough.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you for taking the time to talk with me. I really appreciate it.
Sure.
Of course.
You have a great day, guys.
You too.
All right. We've got some actual theists calling. And
let's do
I'm
it.
going to start with, sorry, what was that, Erika?
I said, let's do it. I'm excited.
Cool. Giddy's calling from Utah, Princeton. Giddy, you're on your web browser, I see. So if you're on your phone, you may have to tap to wake it up. But welcome, you're on the show. And apparently
Giddy,
silent. I could have swore I heard something. So you may have to tap your browser to wake up your phone.
Giddy.
Okay. Well, we're going to put you back in the queue. I don't know how many times I can explain the problem with the web thing, but let's try it again with
we'll come
Mark.
Back.
Mark in Tennessee.
Yes,
you're on with Erika and Matt.
Can you hear me, Matt? Erika?
We hear you. Thanks, Mark.
Okay, good. I just have I've listened to your show several times, and I just want you to help educate me. I was asked if I was a theist. I guess I'm more agnostic because I just want to get your take on you and Erika's take on when you talk about evidence-based, about the universe.
This is kind of frustrating.
The physical properties and,
I mean, this is kind of frustrating. You were asked if you were a theist, and so it listed you as a theist, which means we gave you priority, and now you're saying you're probably not a theist. But what is it we can help you with?
Okay, thanks, Matt. I'm more concerned about. I don't know if you would call it evidence-based, but when you look at the vastness of the universe, so to speak, and the billions of galaxies, I don't know if that's evidence for a higher power, but I kind of wanted to get your take. That's good, because I kind of wanted to get your take, you and Erika's take, on whether you think it happened by chance, whether you think that was I don't believe necessarily. I don't want to go so far to say that there's a creator for something that's created. I just wanted to get y'all's take on, and you've probably answered that 1,000 times, and I haven't heard it, but I just kind of wanted to get your take on. What did you say, Matt?
Does the vastness of space or the number of galaxies in any way indicate an intelligent creator? No. Why would that?
Well, I was just trying to, in my, I guess, limited mind, trying to wrap my mind around how all that could exist from nothing.
It's not a thing from nothing, first of all. But what's wrong with saying I don't know?
I'm sorry, Matt, I lost you.
Yeah, it's because you were talking while I was trying to talk. If we avoid that, that won't happen. So,
okay.
The issue here is, what is it about the vastness of space and the billions upon billions of galaxies that are out there? What is it that makes you think that was created? Why is it not okay to just say, I don't know?
Well, I guess that's what I am saying in a way, that I don't know, and I'm trying to get educated or find out.
Me too.
What I'm just trying to wrap my head around what possibly could have happened. So are you like a Big Bang theorist, or do you think it just happened?
Big Bang theory is the current best scientific explanation for origins that is supported by evidence. Do you know the difference between, like, you're like, are you a Big Bang theorist? That's not a thing. A theory is the highest graduating point in all of science. It is not just a wild guess. It's not something somebody pulled out of their butt. A theory is the thing that every idea in science would hope to become if it were able to hope at all. And so when we look at cosmology and we can't investigate the origin of the universe prior to the Planck time, but what we can do is describe it. And the Big Bang cosmological model is the current best explanation for the observations, and it makes predictions that are validated in observations about the cosmic microwave background radiation. Is it complete and perfect? No. Could it be supplanted by another scientific model in the future? Yeah. Science doesn't make proclamations of truth. It creates models that are the best current representations of that. And so when you say something like, I'm just trying to figure out how there could, what could be the explanation. Are you a Big Bang theorist? The Big Bang doesn't tell us why there's something rather than nothing, because nobody's demonstrated that nothing is possible or that nothing is where everything came from. And Erika's got better thoughts on this than I do. But
no, I mean, I think you've summarized it well, Matt. So, Mark, my perspective on this would be, when you're talking about science, you're talking about science is definitionally, it's a way of knowing, right? It's a way that we glean it's a way that we glean truths about the natural world around us, and truths insofar as science can prove anything, which it can't, right? Everything in science is always provisional. That's the nature of the beast. Now we can take sets of hypotheses via the scientific method, right? That's the way that we've learned everything since the dawn of time, is through the scientific method. You make an observation, a hypothesis that we try to use to explain it. Then we run a bunch of experiments, and these experiments need to be, in order for it to be investigatable by science, they have to be repeatable, they have to be observable, they have to be falsifiable. There's a whole set of criteria that it has to meet in order for it to fall under the purview of science. And as we run all these experiments, they should be able to be tested by many people across space and time. And eventually, it might graduate to being a theory, or if it's mathematical and we're just sort of describing what is happening, it may become a law. Laws are not better than theories. Theories are not better than laws. They're simply different ways of describing very well-supported ideas within the scientific world. So it sounds to me that what's going on here is you look at the majesty of the galaxies that surround us and of the universe as a whole, and you say, that's so wonderful. And it is. I agree. I think it's phenomenal. It fills me with the highest awe that a human can feel, right, to see that. But at the end of the day, it sounds like what you're coming at is an argument from incredulity. You're like, it's wonderful, it's beautiful, therefore it must be designed, or it may even be designed. And I'm sympathetic to that. William Paley was the first guy who ever, proposed a natural theology, and he's the famous guy who did the watchmaker argument, right? We see these complex things in nature around us and in the universe at large, and we come to the conclusion that they simply must be designed because they are so complex. And that argument from complexity, that argument from design, translates at a higher level. I think it's often linked to arguments from incredulity, because it's so difficult to see how something so convoluted and complex can come about naturally. But at that same time, to that same point, when we look around the natural world, so we see things all the time that appear to be designed but demonstrably aren't, right? Natural arches, the complexity of an ecosystem that arises from primary succession. We see things consistently and constantly around us that appear to be so incredibly complex, and yet they are in many ways redundant and convoluted, and they are natural. So when we look to the universe, as Matt said, when we look at the origin of the universe that it is that we live in now, we can create hypotheses. We make all of these different observations, and then we have this set of hypotheses that if Big Bang cosmology is legitimate, or if something very close approaching Big Bang cosmology is legitimate, then it should meet these expectations, these predictions that we've laid out. And in fact, by and large, the vast majority of those predictions have come to fruition, which is what gives us so much confidence in Big Bang cosmology. Now, I would propose that Big Bang cosmology is probably going to be pretty close as we continue to hone our instruments and take more data and incorporate more about the world and the universe at large into Big Bang cosmology. We're going to get closer and closer to the truth. Is it going to be identical to what it is today? No. But science's provisionality is its greatest strength. That's what's so wonderful about science, is that it can change and adapt to new information. as it comes to light. So I would ask you, long story short, is your sort of proposition that this may, be by design or by intent, is that coming from a place of, I have observed, this set of criteria that I would ascribe to a designer and I feel that the universe meets it? Or is it coming from the perspective of, it's just so complicated, I can't conceive of a way it could be otherwise? And if it's the latter, I don't think you have justification to reach that conclusion.
Yeah, I just think it's for the average mind, I just think it's so awesome and so complicated and just so unbelievable that it exists without some reasoning behind it. Like Matt, I've heard you say many times that atheism is not the belief that atheism is not saying there's not a God. It's saying that there's no evidence for God.
No.
And pardon me?
No.
I'm sorry.
Atheism isn't necessarily saying there is no God. It is at its minimum saying, I'm not convinced that a God exists. It isn't saying there is no evidence for God. It's at a minimum, if it's based in skepticism, it would be based in there is insufficient evidence to reach the conclusion that God exists. You're conflating a couple of different answers, but I mean, you're generally on the right track.
Okay. So is it fair to say then that we don't know how the vast universe was, how it came into existence? Is that fair?
I don't know. Erika, do you know?
How the consensus on Big Bang cosmology?
Why there's something rather than nothing?
No, I couldn't tell you. But I mean, I'm content with that, right? Like, open questions in science are good. That is what drives us. Human curiosity is a phenomenal engine, right, for progress.
Right.
So no, I don't know how the universe started, like, with any kind of certainty. I don't know why there is something rather than nothing. But to me, that doesn't lead me to believe that someone, which is sort of the implication here, is responsible for that. And that would lead you to a turtles all the way down situation anyways. So I don't see that as a viable solution, even if I felt that was a reasonable possibility, which I don't.
Okay. Well, thank you both. I appreciate it and hope your teeth get better, Matt.
They're going away, so they won't get better, but I appreciate it.
well, thank you all. Thank you all. That was interesting. Thank you very much. And I hope you have a great show the rest of the way. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
There's by the way, we have lines open for theists. I did drop a theist. So Jackie called in, and despite the fact that we've banned Jackie from shows where I'm on, I'm willing to undo that. But Jackie listened very carefully. You and I need to have a conversation off air about how to have better conversations on air. Otherwise, it's a complete waste of time for me to take calls from you, because you love to cite and name people, and that will never have any sort of impact. It will not impress me. It does not make me think you're smart. It makes me think that you are confused and that you are like every freshman who just read a book and wants to tell everybody about it. That's what it means to me when you're like, yes, but Plato this and Kant this, and I don't care, because the argument and the evidence supporting it are what matter, not who said it, who you heard said it, who you want to reference saying it. And you keep calling in with argument after argument. It's you present different arguments all over the place, and you have this scattershot shotgun approach. I would very much like to have a conversation, but what ends up happening is when myself or Jimmy ask you questions and get you to answer those questions, you then begin to whine about, well, that's not what I called in to talk about. Okay, you can go make your own show, but we're having a conversation about this. So no, I'm not taking a call from you today because I'm in super Zen mode, and you would absolutely break super Zen mode, which is why you and I need to have a conversation before we take another call like that. In the meantime, if you're a theist We are eager to have you call in, ask, and also, we didn't really, in the last caller, we're not asking them to necessarily defend their position, but if you have a position you'd like to defend, if you're convinced that there's a God, if you think the best explanation for the universe is that there is a God, you can call in and make that case. And you have one of the best opportunities today, because Eric and I have different backgrounds. I keep saying Eric instead of Erika, but only because it's like my tongue, because there's more space in my mouth, is not finishing the at the end, and it's driving me crazy. But anyway, it's a great
I don't care.
day. It's a great day to call in. Eric is here, who can get in on the science, and if you have objections to evolution, biology, etc., all that stuff, cool. And if you're like, hey, I don't want to talk to that Matt dude, you can be like this guy. So Sam's calling from Wales with a question mainly for Erika, unrelated to religion, on the difference between Neanderthals and sapien art and how that developed. So welcome, Sam. You're on with Erika, and I'll play a game of chess.
Oh, hello. Can you hear me?
Hi there, Sam. Can hear you. How you doing?
Oh, fantastic. I'm great. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing all right. Yeah, doing well. Excited to have a hominin related question. Sometimes I go entire shows and no hominin related questions. Well, I guess technically if they're human related questions, they're hominin related, but you kind of get what I'm going for. Tell me a little bit about your question.
Okay. Well, it's how do I start this? What I was mainly thinking of was the difference between, I mean, we know Neanderthals created art, that, but Homo sapiens seem to produce a lot more quote unquote sophisticated art, and what I was wondering about your opinion on this, is whether or not it was because we have more canvases, like that. Neanderthals, they're quite hairy, or as we presume. But how do I describe this? I'm sorry, I'm tripping over my words right now.
No, don't sweat it.
But we tend to paint our bodies, and then we tend to use blankets, and then we tend to turn those blankets into...
If I may, Sam, is the question you're kind of getting at here, like what are the differences between the types of art that Homo sapiens produced and Homo neanderthalensis produced, and why did those differences exist? Would that be a fair characterization?
Yeah, I think it's... I just think we might have had more opportunities to have more things to paint on, and Neanderthals didn't. And I don't think they were any less intelligent, but...
Well, so there's a couple of different things that we can talk about with relation to the differences there, right? So first and foremost, there's definitely a survivorship bias. We, like Homo sapiens, as sort of an anatomically modern form, leave Africa approximately 70,000 years ago and spread into the rest of the world and start, moving and shaking in all of these different locations and leaving our mark in the form of things like art and other sort of cultural remnants that we leave behind, whether we're talking about like shelters or kill sites, whatever. Now, Neanderthals had existed in Europe, depending on what you count as Homo neanderthalensis, for at least 400,000 years. So while they have a longer tenure than us, our tenure in the world at large is much more recent. And so that means that we've got this nice bias that exists for pretty much all of paleontology and archaeology in general, which is the more recent the thing was, the more likely you are to find traces of it. And the reason is just because there's been less time for it to get destroyed and weathered and washed away and carried off by animals and things of that nature. So I would tend to agree that I don't think that Homo sapiens was necessarily, especially early on, better at art or more likely to create art. there is a decent argument to be made that there's a marked physiological change between archaic or old Homo sapiens from 300,000 years ago to roughly 100,000 years ago versus Neanderthals. Homo sapiens and Neanderthalensis are pretty similar at that point in time. But around 100,000 years ago, give or take, there's a point mutation that happens in Homo sapiens. I believe it's an arginine to a lysine point mutation, but I'm not 100% sure on that. And it has to do with this enzyme, I believe it's, ACE, enzyme transketolase like 1, which is responsible for the development of a type of neuron called the radial glial cells. And that's really important because it basically commands cells that are in your brain to turn into neurons. Big deal, pretty important, and it's thought to be responsible, at least in part, for the greater neuronal density in modern Homo sapiens as compared to not just archaic Homo sapiens, but Neanderthals. Right. So the idea is that Homo sapiens and Neanderthals are kind of on the same level until about 100,000 years ago. Something happens in the human lineage and we get to jump on them. And maybe that makes us more innovative. Maybe that makes us more adaptive to change. And maybe it's a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B, combined with the fact that the climate was rapidly changing and Neanderthals were already a pretty isolated species with different social organizations than humans. They lived in smaller groups. They were further apart. Humans lived in bigger groups, right? More mouths to feed, but also more opportunities to innovate and to basically take over where and whenever we encountered these other hominin groups. So maybe it is the case that at some level, humans were producing more art than Neanderthals. I don't really think that that matters because the fact that they produced art at all serves to support the fact that they had the brain that was at least ready for symbolic behavior. They had the entire vocal and neural apparatus for speech as well. So whatever they were doing was probably pretty similar to archaic Homo sapiens. They just probably did less of it as compared to anatomically modern Homo sapiens. Now, you talk about things like painting your body. I would imagine that you would take into account things like burials. Neanderthals buried their dead. And there are a lot of people out there that are going to argue that they were burying them with flowers and covering their body in red ochre. They were hairier than Homo sapiens that was living in Africa at the time because, the obvious reasons. If you live in equatorial regions, you don't want to be covered with hair, thermoregulatory reasons, right? But they wouldn't have been too hairy to paint their bodies. And some of the burials that we find with that red ochre suggest that maybe they were actually painting their bodies. We find caves that are ascribed to, or attributed rather, to Neanderthals. And in the depths of these caves, we find broken stalactites and stalagmites organized in circular patterns. What did that mean? Why were they doing that? Who knows? It's hard to say. But I think the fact remains that they were capable of art and did make art probably similar to archaic Homo sapiens. And then modern Homo sapiens really kicks it into overdrive for one reason or another. And maybe it has to do with that point mutation that I talked about, and maybe it doesn't, right? It could just be as simple as it's a cultural phenomenon or it's genetic drift, right? We're just not sure. But if you can think of something that ancient archaic Homo sapiens did, odds are Neanderthals did it too.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just wondering your thoughts about that.
Yeah, I mean, let me recommend a book for you by Rebecca Ragg Sykes. She's got a book called Kindred, which is a really nice compilation of what we know and ascribe to Neanderthals behaviorally speaking. It would have been really cool to meet them. They would have been really, really interesting characters, I think, because they would have been different from us, but very, very familiar.
Yeah, so different but the same. Yeah.
Yeah. All good? Did that answer your question, more or less?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I had one more quick question about the notion of cave paintings. Are you still there?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, shoot. Tell me your question.
No, I just had one more question about cave paintings and the notion of everybody talks about they were like cathedrals and they painted the walls and this is a place of worship. And I've heard a lot of that, but I always think who writes on walls nowadays is teenagers. They would go into the walls and paint on the walls. I think it's far more realistic to think that it was just a bunch of kids painting cool pictures on the walls than it was
Yeah,
some grass.
there are a million reasons to paint on the wall, right? Maybe you're recording information, right? Some of what we think, the reason they draw so many different animals and why they have, the argument goes, some indications as to seasonality and time to these depictions of animals, is that maybe they're saying, to the next generations as they move, and most of these are nomadic groups of people. It's like, hey, okay, this is where you find, the Irish elk, and here's when they're in rut, and here's when it's the best time to go and hunt them. It could be as simple as that. It could be for teaching kids, like, hey, this is what you hunt, this is what you don't hunt, this is what you should fear, this is what you shouldn't fear. Here's what you can eat that will kill you, and here's what, or that won't kill you, and here's what you can't eat because it will. It doesn't necessarily have to be ritualistic in a religious sense. It could be just utility. Right? That's what we do. Or as you said, it could be kids drawing stuff on walls. I mean, we see that kind of thing all the time. It could be as simple as a person wanting to say, I was here. We find in the oldest cave art that we can attribute to Homo sapiens is just people like taking their hands and putting them on the walls and putting pigment around them. They're marking that with their hand, right? Like, I was in this cave. We like to do that. People are weird. It doesn't necessarily have to have some greater religious meaning. We now in the present day want to ascribe such lofty goals and such lofty ideas to every single thing that our ancestors did or our ancient cousins did. But, they're like us. Sometimes they did shit just because they wanted to, just because they thought it was fun or interesting, or they found, like I said, utility in it.
It's difficult.
Yeah, that's what I always think is, like, people give such great, like you say, lofty meaning to, oh, there must have been some incredible meaning to this incredible picture of all of these elk. And it's like, no, maybe people just kill a load of elk and they were like, oh, let's draw them. Like, it could just be that.
Yeah, absolutely. Matt, you wanted to say something there.
It's just difficult when you start looking into art and trying to say, what does it mean? There are some art styles and some pieces of art where you can look at it and make reasonable inferences and say, oh, this was probably, record keeping for the hunt. This was perhaps instructional for the next generation of, we're going to stand roughly here so that you got 2/3 of us behind it. Who knows? I mean, you can listen to a Chapel Roan song and then say, what the hell is she talking about? She's talking about lesbian sex. That's just a fact. In like 90% of it's, yeah. But to say, what does this particular lyric mean? For some, what the artist originally meant is the most important thing. For others, including some artists, what their intent was doesn't matter, and what people take out of it is what matters. And so it's incredibly interesting to me to watch what our ancient ancestors and cousins did, and the fact that we have art showing, hey, these people were here and they did these things. But I think what you were getting ready to say, Sam, and if so, then I'm in agreement. It's a mistake for us to do anything than label our speculation. Like there are some things we can make reasonable inferences about, if you have limited resources, you're using some of those resources to draw on a cave wall.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that, maybe this was the most important thing. Maybe they went through a really rough winter because none of their hunters were properly trained. And this was a way for them to, train the next generation of hunters. Maybe they had a particularly successful one and they just wanted to brag and it get passed along. Maybe it was a starving kid sitting there going, you know what? I remember 2 years ago when we had the big hunt and we killed the big animal, and now I'm really hungry. I'm going to paint that. Maybe it's an appeal to the forest gods. Let me draw on this wall so that we can repeat it again.
Yeah.
And I think that there are some really reasonable inferences we can make, but we need to make sure we're carefully labeling them speculation, because I don't have a time machine and I don't really know Neanderthals all that well.
No, trouble even at higher academic levels with people applying, they're saying this is what they were doing, right? We see this all the time with burial. We've seen it very recently with Homo naledi and saying that they were doing these ritualistic burials in the depths of Rising Star Cave. We can't know that. We oftentimes like to attribute burials specifically to this higher level ritualistic thinking, but that may not always be the case. There's a critical step in between not touching your dead and burying them ceremonially with a headstone. And it's called throwing your dead in a pit because they stink or because they attract predators or because, you don't want to look at them. It freaks you out to see a loved one rotting. And so you toss them in a pit, you get rid of them. But like ants do that, right? Funeral caching is not all that uncommon in the animal kingdom. So it at every single level, we have to be careful because here we are humans. We have all sorts of different reasons for doing all sorts of different things. But we take massive risks when we look into the past and say, well, this must have been what they were doing. And I think it can be almost a bit condescending to them, to these people that once lived, to act as though we know better than they do what they were up to.
That helps him.
That's it. I think that we make so many presumptions about, they must have been doing that, they must have been doing this, and you can never know, like you say. But
True.
Anyway, that's pretty much all I have to say. Also, I will say, Erika, I love your videos, and I've been watching all of the updates on Homo naledi. I'm fascinated by it.
Well, get excited, Sam, because Lee Berger just released another 100-page paper on the subject. So I don't know what he's thinking, but we'll dig into it later.
Oh, brilliant. Okay. Thank you very much for taking my call.
Thanks, Sam.
Of course.
Yeah. Erika, you did a video. I think I saw it like right when I got back. That was about. It's a recent video from you that talked about. Yeah. I'll use the term scientific lies, but errors, lies, manipulations, and one of the key things, of course, is that the only thing that has corrected failings within science is more and better science. At no point has religion come along and said, hello, we have this pronouncement from on high which proves science wrong, and it turned out to be correct.
I find this, so there's a question I've been asking myself a lot lately. It's an obvious one, and I want to do a video like investigating it, but like there's a very, very, very simple answer to the question, where are all the creation scientists? Right? It's because there's no evidence for it, right? No one who starts off like more or less neutral, whatever. I know it's impossible to be truly neutral, but from a secular position, looks at the data, comes to the conclusion, oh my God, the Earth's 6,000 years old, or oh my God, there must have been an intelligent designer, and then they convert. All of these creation scientists, all these guys with PhDs, who are weaponizing them specifically to try to convert more people, they start with the belief, and then they force fit the science. And that is simply not how it's done. It's not how it should be done. Obviously there have been people who in the secular community have also tried to force fit the data into their beloved hypotheses, but that's not the norm.
Yep. So we got more calls, and I'm going to jump right into another one here in just a moment. But just as a reminder, this is one of many shows on the Line Network. There'll be another episode of the Sunday Show After Dark tonight at 7 p.m. And that will have Eve and Seth Andrews. Monday's Skeptalk will be Shannon Q and Paul. Tuesday's Chewed Gum is Alyssa and Eve. Wednesday, I'll be back on the Hang Up with Texas State Director for American Atheists, Will Judy. And Thursday's Transatlantic Call-In Show is going to be Arden and Luxander. You can get all your calls in there. You can go to linemerch.com to pick up your merchandise to support the line. You can also go to patreon.com/calltheline. There are links down below the show in the description to both the Patreon, the PayPal, the Cash App, the wish list, all that stuff, in part because our videos frequently get demonetized. That's going to happen when we're discussing religion. It's going to happen when we're discussing politics. It's going to happen when I drop too many F-bombs. It's going to happen when I say something like the founder of the Muslim religion, by their own admission, is a child rapist. Because as soon as you mention that, it's just going to, irritate some people. And, it was funny because I sat there and watched Muslims defending this, saying, I remember Daniel Pikachu, sorry, not Pikachu, Hakikachu. Everybody calls him Pikachu, and I've not yet slipped, but I did just then. But Daniel Hakikachu literally said that, if there's a 4-year-old that has precocious puberty, that God has then made them eligible for sex at that age. And I'm like, it's weird that objecting to that is what gets demonetized instead of the religious freedom that people want to tout as they advocate for religions that are advocating some really vile things. But we have other calls. Here we go. Brian in is it Minnesota? Pronouns are he, him, says people should explore what religion and Christianity have to offer. Brian, what makes you think people aren't exploring what religions have to offer?
Well, I think that those of you on this program, I think, have some preconceived ideas about religion, and maybe that's preventing you from, or preventing some of the people from exploring that.
Brian, do you realize that almost not everybody, but almost everybody on the Line Network is a former believer of something, and like I was a Christian starting to be a minister.
Okay.
So
okay, yeah, I understand.
When you say people should explore religion and Christianity for what they have to offer, many of us are former Christians, former believers who lived it and taught it. Many of us have a pretty good understanding of what it has to offer, and I'm less interested in whether or not there's benefits to being religious or being a Christian than I am with whether or not it's true. So, do you have a way to demonstrate that it's true?
Okay. No, basically, I explained that to the screener. I wasn't interested in trying to make an evidence base for Christianity. I was interested in arguing for what benefits Christianity has. And
I don't care.
Think that. Okay. All right. So
Brian, let me ask this: is there a benefit to Christianity that is in any way tied to Christianity being true, or are you only advocating for the benefits of living a particular way, whether it's true or not?
Well, I think there's an evidence-based case for it, but I just don't think that those arguments require a comprehensive argument for the existence of God as he is defined in the Bible.
But if you can't show that God exists in the Bible, why would anybody care what the Bible has to say about a God?
Okay, so I think part of the issue here is, as I understand it, you come from a very specific part of Christianity, right? You come from the South. You come from a very specific sect of Christianity. Isn't that true?
No, I'm from Missouri. I was primarily Southern Baptist, but I also went to Pentecostal churches, and I spent decades of my life studying not only a bunch of different varieties of Christianity, but when I realized that my particular upbringing couldn't be correct, I spent decades studying and researching what other versions of Christianity might be correct, and then branching out beyond Christianity to countless other religions, and then beginning a study into the philosophical aspect of what God might exist in order to help direct the search, because there are simply too many possible religions for one to explore within a lifetime. And it seems that none of them are able to demonstrate their truth. But my position, by the way, has nothing to do with whether or not I was raised in a narrow religion or whether or not I come from the South. Are you suggesting that someone raised in a narrow religion coming from the South can't have a better understanding of religion than you do?
Well, the point I was trying to make was that
I'm sorry. The question I asked was, are you suggesting that someone who comes from the South and comes from a narrower a narrow version of Christianity can't know more about religion than you do.
I wouldn't say that. No, I wouldn't say
Then
it, strictly speaking.
what difference does it make whether or not someone comes from the South or whether or not they come from a narrow version of religion?
Well, I think the more experience with a variety of religions you have, the more the better sense you have of kind of what religion is for, and
I do too, which is why I've spent my entire life studying it and debating it. I'm wondering why you decided, rather than actually having a conversation, to just say, to set up a straw man dismissal, suggesting that from your understanding of who I am, that I come from the South and a narrow understanding of religion. You do realize that I've engaged on these topics with people of many different religions for many decades now. So why on earth would you try to dismiss it as if I'm just some guy from the South with a narrow understanding of religion?
No, yeah, and I'm not trying to dismiss you entirely. I'm just saying from my experiences.
Not trying to dismiss me entirely, but you're trying to dismiss me a little bit?
Well, I'm trying to say that I have something of value to say, basically, based on my experience, and but it sounds
if
like
I have something of value to say, Brian, is it ever reasonable for me, if I have something valuable to say Brian doesn't have a good understanding of logic and evidence? Would that be the way to start to present my case?
I would say no.
Then why did you start with I'm from the South and have a narrow view of understanding of religion?
Well, I was just trying to answer your question, and
I don't think that's honest, but I'll let Erika jump in here, because now I think you're just backpedaling, and it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Brian, if I may, it sounds a little bit like maybe you didn't know Matt's full background or something along those lines, and kind of had a line of inquiry with an assumption as to like where he was coming from, when I think from Matt's perspective, right, he's looked into this quite a bit more than I would imagine you would give him credit for. I get where you're coming from with this idea that, okay, Christianity or religion in general has something to offer people, right? It's stuck around for a lot of different reasons, but some people would say that that's one of them, that it gives people, a sense of community or shared beliefs or shared values or whatever. And, my response to that, as it has been in the past, will be the same here, which is that we can get that from areas that are not religious, right? We can form communities around non-religious ideas. We can have values that are non-religious in nature. And that would be nothing new. That wouldn't be novel for a human society or a human community to do. We've seen that all throughout history as well. Non-religious organizations, non-religious sets of values that indeed people have rallied behind and gotten, presumably, and admittedly this is a presumption on my part, quite a bit of they have benefited quite a bit from that. So if your case here isn't that you're going to make a case that Christianity is legitimately true, you're making a truth and evidence-based claim on the religion itself, and it's not that Christianity exclusively can provide these social benefits, where does that leave us? Or maybe you are trying to make the second case. I'm just not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure what to say in response to that. Yeah,
I mean, if you want, maybe it would behoove you a bit to, maybe give that some consideration and call back when sort of you've got like, okay, this is the specific case that I want to make, and it may benefit you as well to like see who's hosting and sort of know where they're coming from, so that we can kind of come at this from a sort of better spot. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's fine. Look, I guess I'm not saying that his background isn't useful. I'm just saying that, I've looked into this. I've come to a different conclusion, and, I was going to give here was the reasons for my conclusion. And
we can still do that. The thing that's problematic, Brian, is what difference does it make at all what my background is with relation to your argument and evidence for your position? You made it about me, which was really silly.
Yeah,
It shouldn't be about me or you. It should be about the truth of the proposition, right? And the value of the proposition.
Do you think you can make that case, Brian? Like, as a pivot here, right? Do you think maybe is the case that you're trying to make are you coming at it from a sort of empirical or objective standpoint, or are you sort of making a case that is anecdotal? And if it's the latter, I would suggest maybe taking some time to frame it. At least I'll speak for myself, although I feel like this applies to Matt as well. I want to hear the argument from an empirical starting point, right? Like, I get it. There are a lot of people out of there who've gotten a lot out of a lot of different things that I don't necessarily agree with. But if you want to convince me that this is what's best for, human society as a whole, you're going to have to come at it from more than just I feel it's beneficial.
Let's try this. Because I want to maybe have a better chance of having a better conversation with you another time or later, Brian. But I'll just ask you this. What is the one best benefit, or what is the one key thing that Christianity has to offer that you feel some people are missing out on?
Okay, I think that it offers a set of principles, values, and practices that have been handed down through the ages that people have found over the years to be useful to them.
So Christianity, just like every other system that people have adopted and followed, includes principles, values, and practices that the people who follow it have found useful.
Right, but keep in mind, science doesn't do that, right? Science just looks at hard facts.
You know what else doesn't do that? Cheese. Cheese doesn't do that. You can't fault science for not doing the thing that it's not supposed to do. Science is the process of exploring the world and coming up with explanations. But the philosophy of science, that actually does have principles, values, and practices that people have found valuable. The philosophy of science has guided us on how to do better science to get better answers. So I just asked what the key thing that people are missing out on Christianity, and your answer was some people have found it useful, which is true for every religion, every philosophy.
So if I may, I actually have a question that I would like to dig in on a little bit here, Brian, because I get the vibe that you're kind of saying, like, oh yeah, science isn't doing this, which is like, okay, so science isn't attempting to make value claims. I would state that that's, for the most part, at least as we're comparing it here, I would say that that's probably true. So if I may, what about Christianity makes it superior to all of these other systems that humans have developed through time, whether it be religious or irreligious? What like about
secular humanism? Yeah, if you're going to compare,
sure.
compare Christianity to something, you don't compare it to science. You compare it to secular humanism.
Right. So what about Christianity makes it, in your opinion, superior? That's what I want to know.
Well, so first of all, I don't necessarily think that Christianity and other modes of, other lines of thinking, other religions are necessarily mutually exclusive. I think different ones have different ideas.
That's not even in the ballpark of an answer. That's not even in the ballpark of an answer to what Erika and I were just asking you. We didn't say anything at all about whether you think, anything at all like that, or whether they're mutually exclusive or not. You were contrasting the benefit of Christianity, which is that it has principles and values people have found useful. You were contrasting that with science. And I said that that's a bad contrast. You need to contrast that with humanism. And you can also contrast it with various other religious things, because what you said that seemed to be in your mind tied to Christianity is true for every religion and every philosophy that includes a set of principles and values. Some people are going to find them useful. That's why they exist.
No, you asked me why is Christianity superior to others? And I didn't argue.
No, I never used the word superior at all. What I asked you is I asked you for the okay.
I think that was me.
Let's rewind and put $500 on it. You want to do that?
Yeah, Brian, I think it was me that did that. I think I was the one that
the
used
issue
that
here
reason.
is that what it says that you're saying is you said people should explore religion and Christianity. And I asked you for the one thing that people are missing, or that you think that people are missing about Christianity. And you said, I wrote it down because I take good notes. I don't just assume somebody says something. A set of principles and values and practices handed down that people have found beneficial. How is that not also true for other religions, including secular humanism?
I think it is true for those, and I think people should explore those as well.
So why on earth should I explore Christianity as opposed to any other philosophical view?
Because it has some different ideas and different approaches.
Then why didn't you say that rather than saying the thing that's true of all of them? What is it about Christianity in particular that we're missing?
Well, I think you just okay. So one of the arguments for it is that the Bible, it has the Bible, which is it's plausibly ancient. It's been around for a long time. So, people have been passing it down and finding it to be useful to them, which I think is an argument for its reliability, its usefulness.
No, sir. It's actually a fallacy, because the truth of something and the usefulness of it is not impacted anyway by the length of time that the idea has been around, how popular it is, how many people follow it, how strongly they believe it. I asked you just now for what specific benefit there is to Christianity, and you just said it's old.
Okay, well, I'll address one specific thing that the Bible says. Okay, so one of the things that the Bible says is, and I'm quoting, a prudent person foresees danger and takes precautions. The simpleton goes blindly on and suffers the consequences. So it's telling you, look out for danger. So, for example, I take that to heart by wearing seatbelts, by not smoking, by not skydiving. Why? Because there's scientific evidence that those things, help to protect me.
You know what?
Seatbelts.
You know what? Do you think that there was evidence that it would be wise to take precautions when the Bible was written? Do you think that those people understood that there's, do you think their lived experiences of whoever wrote Proverbs 27:12 understood that, hey, it's wise to take precautions?
Yeah, and I think that's why he wrote that.
Does that have anything to do with the truth of Christianity at all? Isn't that just a saying that could exist and probably did exist virtually anywhere in the world where anyone had ever observed danger and taken precautions against it in the future?
Yeah, I'm sure other people.
So when I asked for what is it we're missing from Christianity, you said that it's a set of principles, values, and practices that handed down that people have found valuable. And then when I pointed out that was true of every religion, and or nearly all of them, and wanted something specific to Christianity, you went to Proverbs to point out something that any infant figures out in the process of navigating their living room, and every adult figures out long before they're an adult. What is it about Proverbs 27:12 that made you think, wow, this is such a powerful thought that it testifies to the value and truth of Christianity?
Well, look, keep in mind, a lot of people don't follow that, right? A lot of people don't wear their seatbelts.
Brian, that's not what I asked.
Smoke,
Brian, that's not what I asked.
Okay, well, look, I don't necessarily think any individual thing in the Bible is uniquely valuable, but I think
Then why did you pick that one? Then why did you pick that one? Why did you pick something that every single person of any reasonable intelligence and interaction with the world would see is true?
Because it's a concrete piece of advice that the Bible gives, and
Do you think this concrete piece of advice originated with the Bible?
I don't know that the first person who thought about it was the person who wrote the Bible, but
okay. Well,
it's in the Bible.
Proverbs was written later than like Genesis and Exodus, right?
I'm not sure.
Wow.
Probably.
So you don't know that Proverbs was written after Genesis?
I haven't studied the exact chronology of when.
Do you think Proverbs was the first book written for the Bible? Here, were there people who existed prior to Proverbs being written?
Probably, yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Were there people living and in existence who understood what Proverbs 27:12 says before Proverbs 27:12 was written?
Did they understand what it says before it was written? That's what you're asking?
Like the principle of it.
I don't understand how genuinely, this is my job, and I am asking the most simple, straightforward questions. I don't understand the confusion. Prior to this passage being written, were there people alive who understood about danger and precaution?
I think they did, yeah.
Then how could this verse be significant at all if it was already understood?
I think there's an argument to be made, and I think people make this all the time, that you only have one life to live, so go skydiving, smoke and so forth. So there's another philosophy.
You don't like smokers, do you?
What was that?
You really don't like smokers. You keep bringing up it as if it's relevant. It's not relevant. The issue here is that you cited a passage in Proverbs as if it were significant or insightful or as if it taught us something. You picked out of the entire Bible this one verse as the one that you wanted to focus on, showing the value of Christianity. And when we push back to say that people understood this before it was written, we didn't need a Bible to tell us that the wise person sees trouble coming and gets out of its way. And so when I point this out, now you're dancing around.
Well, I can point to other things as well, but the point is, look, I'm not saying that.
The point is, Brian, I don't care if you can point to other things. You pointed to this, and I'm pointing. If you're in an elevator and somebody desperately wants you to demonstrate why they should care about Christianity, are you telling me that you're going to quote Proverbs 27:12?
If I was in an elevator, maybe not.
Why have you never heard the term elevator pitch?
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to make a very quick.
So why is it when I ask the most obvious question, rooted in a common trope of the elevator, what's your elevator pitch? It doesn't mean you have to be in an actual fucking elevator. It means that if somebody is asking you, hey, why should I care about Christianity? Are you going to respond with Proverbs 27:12? And if your answer is no, why did you do it today? And if the answer is yes, then please answer my question from before.
Well, wait, I didn't come here to make an elevator pitch because, you're not the kind of person to make an elevator pitch to, because you're not going to be maybe quite as open to it as maybe somebody in an elevator would.
Brian, are you suggesting that you know whether or not I'm open to being convinced by evidence while you repeatedly fail to provide any and admit that you can't?
Well, look, you're a professional atheist, right? And I'm not putting that down, but you're basically run a show as an atheist, so you're not necessarily going to be somebody who's going to be convinced easily. Wouldn't you agree?
Brian, I didn't say anything about being convinced easily. I'm saying, are you suggesting that I'm dishonest in my character, that I won't be convinced if you were to present evidence, while you sit here and say that you can't present evidence? I find that incredibly ironic that you're attacking my character as I sit here and honestly explain stuff and have done nothing but ask you questions to defend what you're saying. And you keep breathing heavily, panicking and running away and then attacking my character. What should people take of this? Do you think Jesus is going to be proud of you for suggesting that I'm closed-minded because I do a show? Or is it because I know and understand this stuff way better than you?
No, look, I'm not trying to attack you. I'm just saying that's the reality that
you did. No, you don't get to assert. No, Brian, you don't get to assert what the reality inside my mind is. Do you have evidence that I am going to be more closed-minded to this than the person you meet in the elevator?
Well,
you don't have to answer. You don't have to answer that because I don't give a fuck. But the other thing is, do you realize that there are thousands of people watching this right now and tens of thousands of people watching this over the next couple of days and hundreds of thousands of people will be watching this clip as it gets exposed? Why aren't you talking to them? Why aren't you providing the evidence for your belief? Because some of those are the people that you might have interacted with the elevator. Some of them, even if you're absolutely convinced that I'm closed-minded, some of them are open-minded. Why are you failing at every turn to present anything or even communicate openly and honestly in answer to questions and instead making personal attacks against me?
Yeah, that's mainly what what I've been trying to do is talk to the more open-minded people out there, which to some extent is you, I think.
Okay, I'm going to mute you, Brian. When I unmute you, I'd like for you to explain how you know that I'm not sufficiently open-minded, or that I am sufficiently less open-minded than the people listening to the show. Go ahead.
Hello. Please leave a message after the tone.
Okay.
Hi, Brian. Somehow or another, it hung up and went to your voicemail. So I'll ask you the question again that you cowardly ran away from. Can you demonstrate why you think I'm not sufficiently open-minded when you present zero evidence? Goodbye. It's so wild. What I'd like for somebody to explain exactly what I did that demonstrates a closed-mindedness or anything at all problematic. All he did was say Christianity has included a set of principles, values, and practices handed down that people found useful. And when I was like, okay, be more specific about something tied to Christianity, he goes to Proverbs 27:12, which is just saying wise people see trouble coming and get out of its way, but fools go straight to the trouble and suffer for it.
I'm so curious as to how that is like distinguishing Christianity from anything else. I mean, if we really want to, like, I was honestly wondering the same thing.
Judaism,
why that verse? Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there you go. Exactly. But it's like, why that one? He's got this platform to make his case for Christianity, and then, like you said, he picks a verse from Judaism. It doesn't make a lot of sense, and one that's so common sense. I mean, it would be like saying, "Oh, do unto others as you would want done unto you." Oh, the golden rule, like one of the most common pillars of civilization out there. That's what we're going with. So I don't really understand it. But then the doubling and tripling down. I mean, surely he saw the writing on the wall, like acting as though he's in your mind and has your perspective on this. I think his whole point was that, I think, is the idea that it's like you're you've got a show where you're asking to be convinced, therefore that makes you less convincible, less open-minded. I find that to be at odds conceptually. That's weird to me.
It's really strange, because all we did was sit here saying, okay, and I guess we should have known at the start, because he admitted right from the beginning when I asked that he didn't have any way to present an evidence-based case for Christianity. And I think that already puts someone in a weird position. So here's a call. I get it. By the way, I think, Erika, you have a hard stop at 4, right?
I do, yeah, 4:15. So, but
I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going solo after that. Probably. Well, it depends on calls, but the thing is, I'm putting out a specific call. If you're someone who thinks that Christianity can't be demonstrated by evidence, and yet you are a Christian, I'd love for somebody to call in and explain how that works. Because if science proposed something for which that was speculative, and we didn't have sufficient evidence, I don't know how I couldn't believe it. It is impossible for me to say, I'm convinced there's no way to demonstrate that this is true, and I'm convinced that it's true. I don't get that.
I mean, without saying that, appealing to an anecdotal experience, I don't think you can. Definitionally, I don't think that you can move forward with that outside of saying, well, it did this for me. Well, people say that about homeopathy or chiropractic,
yes.
Or chiropractic. It's a nothing statement at the end of the day. And I don't know why you would feel that that's going to be convincing to someone else.
Yeah, it's wild. All right, let's try this again. Giddy in Utah, pronouns are he, and you're on with Erika and Matt.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you now. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, sorry about that me dropping the last phone call. I had a family member walk in and refused to leave, and I didn't want to deal with their judgment.
That's fine.
Sorry about that. Okay,
no problem.
Yeah. All right, I guess let me get to what I practiced writing and reading. So, yes, I've read and researched so much against my specific religion for nearly half a decade now. Am I a bad atheist or a good Christian? I really just want to chat about my cognitive dissonance and feeling kind of comfortable with it, because it hasn't really shifted in the past near decade.
You might be the person.
Talk about that.
You might be the person I was calling for, because you're talking about cognitive dissonance, which is kind of what I was reaching out about. So, where are you? What are you convinced of, and what do you think you can demonstrate?
Ask the question again, if you would.
What is it that you're convinced of, and what do you think you can demonstrate or not about it?
Oh, quite frankly, I can't demonstrate it. It's, or how do I say this? I'm convinced of, I am convinced of the facts of things, but I also believe I guess it would be religious hearsay, and they just sit next to each other. They don't fight. So I can't convince anything, not even myself, to pick one side over the other.
So what
sorry,
makes
I don't know
you?
If I'm the guy.
What's the source of your belief then? Why do you choose to believe it? What's compelling to you about that particular set of beliefs? If it's not empirical, what is it?
Oh, about I would give it about 3 decades of hard-learned routine. So yeah, I really don't know if I'm the guy for to answer your question there.
That didn't answer the question. So
yeah.
All right, let's try this, Giddy. Are you convinced that a God exists?
Only Only when a flight gets turbulent or before I talk to a crush. Other times, no.
I don't even know how to take that. So you're saying you don't believe there's a God unless there's a turbulent flight?
Yeah, then I start praying.
Yeah, but does that mean that your belief status changed?
How
Do you
I
believe
say
in a
this?
God, or do you believe that it's just not going to hurt anything to pray when the plane's rumbling?
Okay.
Stop looking at chat
Yeah.
and just focus on what we're saying.
Oh. Done. Okay, repeat the question, if you will.
Oh boy.
Are you saying that when a plane gets turbulent, you go from not believing in God to actually believing in God, or that when there's turbulence, you are willing to pray just in case?
I am saying that I have experienced a comfortable cognitive dissonance, and I am calling to ask about that, and so that I can better educate myself about leaving my specific religion, not to defend it. I don't think I am anywhere near
I don't know what
attached
your
to
specific
the last.
religion is, because we can't even get you to answer the first question.
What? Okay.
I'm just not really sure where we can go with this, Giddy. I'm a little bit stumped here. Like, what are you calling to argue? Are you calling to argue anything? Do you have a statement that you would like to make a case for?
No, I've never made a case for anything.
No, I'm asking if you want to. I'm asking what is the purpose of your call? What do you want to discuss?
I want to discuss. Both of you are very learned people.
Giddy, can you go where I don't have to listen to the kids in the background?
Well, I'm already in a closet. So unfortunately, no.
Okay.
I can go yell at kids to be quiet.
No, don't yell at the kids. The kids are just being
you don't
kids.
have to do that.
It's just distracting in the background,
I know.
and it's hard enough to get you to focus. See, I'm gonna ask some simple questions. So, the first question that I asked was, "Are you convinced that a God exists?" And you're like, "Normally not, but when there's turbulence, I am." And so, for clarity, I asked you, "Are you saying that when there's turbulence, you actually begin to believe that there's a God, or when there's turbulence, you just pray reflexively just in case?" And you didn't answer that question.
Oh, that's what you meant. Thank you for the clarification. Yes, I pray with the belief of a God. Yes.
Okay. So what happens between when there's no turbulence and when there is turbulence that changes your justification about whether or not you should be convinced that there's a God?
Nothing much. I just
something has to change, Giddy. Okay. Do you just run around and don't believe in God sometimes, but other times you just believe in God for no apparent reason?
Okay. That's actually what the call is about. I want to get your opinions on this. I'll say the keywords again: cognitive dissonance that I experience. I want to become try this whole full atheist experience out, and it slips from me. So I want to ask your opinions, advice,
Giddy,
such and such. Yeah.
You need to contact recoveringfromreligion.org. You can go to their website. They have people there whose job it is to have these discussions. I'm not convinced that either Erika or myself, today in particular, are going to get anywhere of any special usefulness here.
I'm not looking for like advice in that sense. I want to hear about the psychology of cognitive dissonance. It's interesting to me. I've lived with it for a while.
And you should go out to
and
YouTube. You should go out to YouTube and enter the term cognitive dissonance and listen to some videos that specifically go through it and address it.
Well, it's okay. I figured you guys would be versed in it, and I could learn about more.
We
about
are,
it here.
but that's not what this
the case.
show is, and the inability of you to answer the specific questions that allow me to actually engage on the subject is just going to prevent it from being productive.
Well, I haven't really gotten to any questions other than your own.
That's not true, Giddy. I've
okay.
asked you the same question several times, and you've refused to answer it. How is it that you can then accuse me of how is it you can begin by saying you haven't really got to any of the questions?
Sorry, my questions. I haven't.
I'm not interested in. I'm not going to wait around for your questions. If you can't explain the basics of what we're talking about, your questions become irrelevant, don't they?
Well,
all right, Giddy, ask us a question. One question.
Yeah.
One question.
I guess I'll just YouTube it, I guess.
Okay. When you come up with a question that you'd like to ask, try giving a call back. And when you think you're ready to kind of dig in and answer some of the questions that are about, what you believe and why, which should help us get to it, then feel free to call back then. But we'll let you go for now. Thank you.
Okay.
Take care, Giddy.
One of the things is, I get it. I do this shit more times a week than any of you know of, because in addition to doing Sunday shows and Wednesday shows and other people's podcasts, I, apart from Mondays, which are rat day, because Tuesday's trash day, every other day, I'm answering questions for people. I'm digging in on these subjects. I'm studying up on these things. I get it. But if we can't get past the basics, like if you want to call in and have a conversation, cool. That's what we want. But there's some bare minimums. One is there's nothing I can do if you're calling in to tell us what your particular esoteric beliefs are that you don't think can be justified. I'm interested in why you believe something that you don't think can be justified. That's a curiosity for sure. But it's if you're not quite ready to say, here's what I'm convinced of and why, I'm not sure what we can really do with that. So esoteric weird beliefs are a curiosity. I'm interested in the epistemology behind, hey, what is my reason for believing this? And if you can't even get to what you believe, we can still have some conversation, but it's going to be more difficult. And if saying, okay, if you have a question for us, ask that question. And it's, yeah, maybe I don't. It's cool. You can call in. And when you realize that you weren't ready to call in, go take some time, write down some notes, ask somebody else, rewind the thing and look at the questions that we asked, and then sit there and say, wow, Matt asked this question. Let me pick that question apart, like word for word, and make sure I understand it, because odds are I'm going to get asked that question again.
Well, and it's okay to not know where you stand. And if calling in is that sort of the means by which you figure out you don't know where you stand, that's great. As Matt said, take some time, figure out where you land, where you're sitting, and then call back. But what I don't think we really can do is sit here and litigate where it is that you stand if you're not even sure where you stand. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a difficult task, and it takes up quite a bit of time, especially when we've got other callers on the line. So, you know, Giddy, no shade on you, but take some time, figure out where you're at, call back when you got a better idea. And we can kind of dissect it then.
John's calling from South Carolina. Pronouns are he, him. John wants to talk about the triumphal entry and how it's problematic for the Jesus story. What's going on, John?
Hey guys, appreciate you taking my call.
Sure. I take it you're not a Jesus follower, but you're a theist of some other stripe?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Cool.
So here's my thing on the triumphal entry story. To me, it is the biggest issue for the Jesus story. You know, I know different people have different takes on, you know, probably what's more problematic, you know, as far as contradictions or whatever. But to me, it is the single most problematic. And to me, like the simplest, where it's just, there's really no way to squirm out of this. I'm sure people have tried and will continue to try. But to me, it really comes down to two main issues. The first one is Mark and Matthew's versions of the story are different in several ways. One of them is that they both quote Jesus, and they're basically talking about the same thing, but they have different quotes from Jesus. Now, if they're talking about the same story, let's say, just for example, for sake of the discussion, that Mark's version of the story is true, then Matthew's version is now fallacious because he's giving a false quote of Jesus. If we take the reverse of that, let's say that Matthew's absolutely is true, well, now Mark's is false. So,
John, I think your call dropped.
Still there?
Or your phone went into silent mode.
Hey guys, you still there?
Yes.
Oh,
I can hear you, John.
Hey, still there?
I can hear him, Matt.
Is Erika still there? Oh, am I the one that's frozen?
I think it might be you,
myself,
Matt.
myself and Erika can both hear him.
Hopefully Matt can hear us. Sorry, John, just one sec while we sort our stuff here.
Matt's reloading.
Matt's
just
working
let me
on
know
it.
when you're ready for me to.
Yeah, of course. Matt, you back with us?
I'm back.
Okay, perfect. John, go ahead. Hopefully we can hear you.
Okay, awesome. Sounds good. So let's just, you know, take the reverse of that, like I said, and assume that Matthew's version is true when now Mark's is false. So they can't both be correct on their quotations of Jesus. They're either, you know, both incorrect or at least one of them's incorrect. And then the other way that they differ is that, and this is probably pretty well known, so I'm just trying to get a little more into the weeds, you know, on this, but in one of them, in Mark, it has them getting one animal, whereas in Matthew, it has them getting two animals. And there's a specific event where it talks about, you know, after the disciples have gone and got the animal or animals, depending on which version it is, they bring their clothing, and it's in Mark, it says they set their clothing on the animal and Jesus sat on it. In Matthew, it says they brought their clothing, set them on them, and Jesus sat on them. They're talking about the exact same event, but they're using different language to talk about the same event. So both versions cannot be true. And then the second issue, real quick, just to cover, is, you know, of course, Luke, to my knowledge, doesn't cover this event at all. John actually has Jesus go and get the animal, whereas
Luke covers
Mark
it.
and Matthew. Okay, gotcha. So I'm not versed on the Luke part of it. That could be a whole different discussion depending on where that goes.
The triumphal entry is Matthew 21, Mark 11, Luke 19, and John 12.
Awesome. Okay.
But
so
the things that you're pointing so there are a number of conflicts between the synoptic gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and John. There are conflicts between those, but there are the three synoptic gospels. They're not all, you know, it's curious to me why you picked this, because trying to reconcile the Easter accounts between the four gospels is a bigger deal and something nobody's been able to do. But this is at least easier to reconcile in that, first of all, yes, did they go and fetch a donkey and a colt or just a colt? it may be that they fetched both, but two of the authors only mentioned one thing. But you're talking about whether or not Jesus sat on clothes or Jesus sat on the animal itself. None of this, and this is just, let me put my apologist hat on. Nobody's saying that the Bible is inerrant in every word at all. There's just that there are no significant mistakes in its original form, which we don't have. A conflict between Matthew and Luke on, or Matthew and Mark, on whether or not there was a donkey and a colt or just a colt doesn't mean that the entire Bible is wrong and that God doesn't exist and, oh my God, there's a contradiction that you can't resolve. None of it matters, because it's people telling stories that may be true in some regard, but none of the things about this triumphal entry are key to requirements for salvation for Christianity. So I mean, of all the things you could have picked out, you picked out one where there's some conflict, but there's more conflict in the Easter account, which is genuinely a bigger deal than the triumphal entry.
So I actually, to me, this is just where I'm coming from. I chose this because to me, the Easter accounts are actually easier to squirm out of than the triumphal entry. And we may just have to agree to disagree on that. That's why I chose this.
No, we don't have to agree to disagree. I despise the phrase agree to disagree. It is just absurd to think that the shorter passage where there's a lot of agreement about the triumphal entry is less convoluted than the Easter accounts, considering the number of books that have been written trying to reconcile the Easter accounts. And since you didn't know that the triumphal entry was covered by Luke, I'm going to make a little bit of an appeal to, I know more about this than you do.
Okay, so what, as far as like the different quotations of Jesus, like with your apologist hat on, how would you explain that? Like with the quotations between Matthew and Mark not matching, like, so they can't both be correct.
Yes, but you have no justification for saying, you do realize if Jesus existed and this stuff happened, Jesus wasn't speaking English, right?
Yes.
Did you read it in any language other than English?
No, sir.
So why on earth would you look at the English language from a couple of different translations and say, you do realize that, like Matthew, Jesus says, in that village, you'll find a donkey and her colt, untie them and bring them to me. And in Mark, it says, in that village, you'll find a colt, untie it and bring it to me. So Jesus didn't utter those words in English. So how did you rule out that this is an irrelevant translation issue, especially considering the languages they were using and the limitations of that?
Yep. So like I said, I understand, you've got the apologist hat on and you're not actually, to me, the issue then becomes the translation game. Like that's, when now, I guess then that opens up a whole can of worms about, which translation's correct. Because if we look at the original, let's assume that that's the correct word of God. Well, then there's
you don't have the original
that come out in the NIV. What's that?
Nobody has the original, John. There are no originals.
Yep. Okay. So I guess that would be then the earliest that we have, like the Masoretic text with the Old Testament, and then, the Greek for the New Testament, whatever the earliest that we have. I'm just saying.
Can you read those?
Sir?
Can you read those?
No, sir, I cannot.
Then what difference do they make?
Well, then I guess this whole thing just, collapses into translations, because then now I'm expected to go through and learn Greek and Hebrew. Like if God cannot present correct
No, because you don't have the originals anyway. And because this doesn't matter whether Jesus told them to go get a donkey and a colt, or just told them to get a colt, whoever jotted down this story could have gotten it slightly wrong in what Jesus said, right?
Well, then now that's a problem of like, why aren't we getting
Right.
the correct
The
version
question
of
was
it in
right.
English?
So,
What's that?
right. So one of these people could be wrong, but does that tell you what actually happened?
No, but we're going off of the English version. That's what I'm addressing.
You don't
because
have
that's
to.
what most people
When
are
I
working
ask a
with.
yes or no question, you don't have to say anything after the yes or no. I'm building to a point. You're objecting to the fact
Gotcha.
that
Okay.
the Gospels tell the same, that four different people tell essentially the same story, but have slight disagreements about details. We already know that. Everybody already know that. It is a key aspect of scholarship to determine what errors are potentially scribal errors, which ones relate to tenets of salvation and soteriology. And so the one that is most problematic is the reconciliation of the Easter event, not whether Jesus said, go steal a donkey or go steal a donkey and a colt. It's more problematic that Jesus sent his disciples to steal a donkey than whether he sent them to steal a donkey and a colt or a donkey alone or a colt alone. It's the advocation for stealing that is the problem here.
I no objections on that part.
So what religion did you decide to go with since this one doesn't work?
So I'm just I really haven't found, the right word to describe it. I believe that there is some type of higher power, and that there is good and evil, in a spiritual sense. I guess some people would say supernatural. I don't really like the term supernatural, but it essentially comes down to my experiences and just the word seemings. And it's entirely possible that this is all there is, and I'm completely, aware of that. And it's not the kind of thing where I just run around, trying to shove my beliefs down people's throats. It's, I've been an atheist at one point and then swung back to being a theist, just, a non-Christian theist.
Why?
But I 100% full disclosure, it's personal experience, I guess maybe personal revelation, and it's just a hunch that I have.
Is
and
that
it
a
comes
good
down to
personal revelation? You've received revelations from whom and how do you know?
I would say whatever that higher power is. If it is a revelation, it could just be something in my brain chemistry.
Oh, okay. So maybe you didn't get a revelation. How could you tell the difference between getting a revelation from a higher power and thinking you got a revelation from a higher power?
There's no way to distinguish that.
Then why do you believe in a higher power if you have no way of distinguishing it?
Like I said, going back to personal experience and just what seems to be the case. And I understand, from your view, I've been watching you for a long time. I understand that in your view, that is not a good reason to believe. And I fully respect that. To me,
Why do you think it's a good reason to believe?
What's that?
Why do you think it's a good reason to believe?
I think it is a good reason to believe because what I understand to be the concept of good and evil, I'd rather bet that good and evil are real and take the chance that, hey, maybe if this is all there is, then it doesn't matter. But if they are real, then, hopefully I will have lived my life in a way that is consistent with good and do my best to flee from evil. And, like I said, if this is all there is, then it doesn't matter.
Say it again, Erika.
No, I mean, that sounds like a deist Pascal's wager to me. Like
Yeah.
that's all that is as far as what I'm hearing, which is almost a little from where I'm standing. It's almost less rational than a regular Pascal's wager because I don't imagine you think you're going to be punished if you weren't to take that perspective, or like Matt and I are going to be punished from the perspective that we're taking under your sort of deist, ambiguous higher power perspective. So
what
what
is it that you
compels
can
you?
what is it that you can do as a believer that I can't do as a non-believer with respect to good and evil? Can I not live a good life?
So my thinking on that would be that, at least this is my experience, that by my personal code, what I see about the world as far as good and evil, I have stricter standards for what is good and what is evil, and then what's just, mundane and not that big of a deal. So I'm not trying to say I'm
Why do
morally
you have the
superior
standard?
to you. I know
Why
how
do you have the, if you don't think they're superior, then why do you hold to them? My moral standards are superior to any version of Christian moral standards I've ever been presented with. I believe that, and I can defend it.
I agree with that. There's a lot of problematic stuff, like in the Old Testament with the
That's not
hand-cutting
the
law,
point.
the slavery.
You're the one saying that you're advocating for a particular good and evil, and you're then saying, I'm not saying it's better than anybody else's. I mean, do you understand how frustrating it is to hear somebody say, I got my own moral standard? I'm not saying it's better than anybody else's, but that's the one I'm going with. Why? Why that one? And why wouldn't you go with one that was better?
Well, so you asked me, like, what would I be restricted from more than what you would be restricted from? That's what I understood you to be saying. And so I was saying there's certain things that I think, and I don't want to assume anything, but there are certain things that I think you would think are not evil or not that big of a deal that I think are evil and are not okay. And so that's where I think the difference lies. I wasn't trying to say that I'm a better person than you. I didn't want it to be taken that way.
So from that perspective, though, John, I'm curious, right? Because it almost sounds like you're like, from a general deist perspective, you're like, but morality is also kind of subjective, and if you can't pick which morals or which moral system is better, right? Or if you don't have an opinion on which one is better, how did you settle on the one that you currently hold to?
Yep. So it absolutely is subjective, and it's just the best I've got to work with. And like I said, this could be all there is. And if this is all there is, then it is what it is. And when I die, that's that. My story's done, and it's all I've got. And so it's certainly not the kind of thing where I would try to call you guys up and say that, I didn't start the call out by saying, hey, I'm a theist and this is what I believe,
Sure.
But that's the purpose of the show.
Mm-hmm.
The purpose of the show is for people to call in and say, here's what I believe and why I believe it. And in particular, why I think other people should believe it. Why on earth should we spend any time doing a call-in show, John, where somebody calls in and says, here's what I believe. I have no interest in defending it. I don't think I can defend it. It doesn't matter to me if anybody else accepts it. I don't think it's better than anybody else. I mean, why would we ever do a show like that?
Yep. That's fair enough. And, like I said, the main reason I called was, about the triumphal entry matter. And, we discussed that. And, so you did ask me, what I believe, and, it is your show. So I wanted to present, what I have. I just wanted to be understood. I'm not.
Yeah, John, I mean, that's the thing, though, right? Like, I feel like we do understand where you're coming from, but, like, I think from Matt and I's perspective, like, we're curious as to why you come from the perspective you come from. And it can be a little frustrating, or, like, I guess it almost just piques my curiosity further when you're like, I believe what I believe, and there's not really any particular reason why I believe that way, outside of, like, an anecdotal potential divine revelation, which to that, I say, okay, I can't prove you wrong on that. I've not had the same experience, so I'm working off of what I've got. So I don't really know what to do with that, to be honest. I mean,
I don't know. When somebody calls in and says, I believe in God, but I don't think I can demonstrate it. I don't have a good reason. I don't necessarily think I'm right. I mean, that is a level of bizarre to me that almost eclipses the person calling in saying, I believe that Jesus was God incarnate and sacrificed himself to himself as a loophole. I mean, that's bizarre. And the Trinity is a concept that makes no sense at all, no matter how many times somebody tries to make it make sense. but it's, it's, some people have convinced themselves that, oh, those religions are so bizarre that I can't believe any of those, but I'll just believe something and then say, I don't have a good reason. I don't think it's better than anybody else's. I don't think it's more accurate. I don't have any. That to me is the most bizarre thing, to say that you believe something and then say, but I don't have any good reason for it.
Well, I think that it's a good reason, but I know that you, and I don't want to assume this about Erika, but I think that it is probably something that you, Matt, think is not a good reason and that Erika does not. It works for me, and it's the best I've got because, hey, I'd rather
No,
assume
it's not the
good and
best
evil
you've
are
got.
real and try to
No,
live
it's
my
not
life
the best you've
accordingly.
got. It's not the best you've got, because you can say you don't know whether or not there's a God and you don't know about these other things. That would be honest. And then you would be living an honest life. And is there anything that you can do with respect to morality and good that I can't?
So then the problem with that becomes if I assume
Is there
that there
anything
is
that
no
you
God
can
and
do
live
with
my life that way.
respect to morality that I can't?
What's that now?
Is there anything that you can do with respect to morality that I can't?
You're talking about if I keep going as I am now and not changing to the other
You are
perspective you're talking about, right?
saying that you have a moral system that is contingent on your God belief.
Mhm.
I don't have a moral system contingent on a God belief. How is your moral system better? What can you do that I can't?
I wouldn't say that there's anything that I can do that you cannot. I think it's more in terms, the difference is in the restrictive aspect of it. There's more that I cannot do than you.
Like what?
Because if
What
I
can't you
assume that
do? What can't you do that I can do?
be a massive jerk to people, and I'm not making any kind of innuendo, nothing like that. I'm just throwing that
The
out there
fuck
as
you're
an
not.
example.
How dare you try to pretend that you didn't just call me a massive jerk? How dare you? You're a liar. You can lie to yourself and to the people who are here. How dare you pretend that you're morally superior while you fucking lie to my face after calling me a massive jerk? You don't have a moral superiority. You don't.
Matt, I was not
You
trying
lie to yourself, and you just lied to my entire audience because you can be a massive jerk. You just were a massive jerk by suggesting that I'm a massive jerk and that you're better than that, you smug prick.
I was not talking about your reputation, Matt.
You're a liar. You're a liar, John. That's why Erika has her hand over her mouth, because she can't believe that you just tried to pull that shit by calling me a massive jerk and then simultaneously pretending that you didn't call me a massive jerk. Are you going to apologize and admit that you're a liar, John?
I will say it could have been subconscious, and if that's acceptable to you,
You're a liar, John. It wasn't subconscious. You know what? You can't even apologize or acknowledge what you just did. Don't pretend that you have some moral superiority. You are morally inferior to me on that respect. 100%. You lie to yourself.
I can see where it could have been subconscious.
You lie to yourself, and you can't even fucking acknowledge it or apologize. And you know what? I'm still in Zen mode because you can't get to me because you are weak, John.
I just apologized to you. I don't know if you heard it, but
no, I didn't. What'd you apologize for?
I said it could have been a subconscious dig at you, and I am
That's
sorry.
not a fucking apology, John. I want you to go out and Google how to actually apologize. When you apologize, you say, I did this and I was wrong. I regret it and I am sorry. I will try to never do that again.
It was not
That's an apology. Say,
was
shut
not
up, John. That's
intentional.
shut up, John. Saying it might have been subconscious. That's not an apology, you dipshit. Anything else? John went away.
Woof.
I'm very sorry, Erika. I lost my cool there and called him a dipshit.
It's okay, Matt.
I tell you what.
I see your comment. With the second he said that, we were both like, oh, oof, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know about that.
What you know what I can do? I can not be a massive jerk to people. Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Erika has to leave us, unfortunately, because I'd love to do like a 9-hour show with you one of these days.
Yeah, Matt.
But
It would if we could get like a little triad, you, me, and Forrest, and just do a full 24-hour stream.
I wouldn't get to speak, and I really wouldn't want to. I love watching you and Forrest go at it. It's just awesome.
No, man, I wish that I didn't have to go. I do though, unfortunately. But we need to do another one of these, and then like actually I can go to its completion like last time. So, but this has been a blast for me. I love coming on the Sunday show. It's super fun. We get to do a little good cop, bad cop thing. I think it's enjoyable. I'm the bad cop, obviously. Guys, thank you for having me on as usual. Thank you for all the super chats. Thank you for being here on the Sunday show. I look forward to being back here real soon. And you are obviously, I don't even have to say it, in very capable hands. So I'll see you guys real soon next time. Take care.
We have 2 more callers left that I'm going to try to get to before we wrap this up. And we'll take it as easily as we can. Jay in Nevada is a panentheist who wants to talk about panentheism. So, Jay, you're on, unfortunately, just me.
How are you today?
I'm okay. How are you?
I'm good, man. Thank you. So I was actually calling because last time I called, I was with Grayson and Erika, and I had asked about when consciousness started in our evolution, and Grayson gave me good references, and then Erika wanted to know more about my belief system, but I didn't think it was very well refined. And honestly, I wasn't expecting to have you here, so I'm a little intimidated. But anyways, appreciate you a lot.
Well, if it makes you feel better, I'm pretty much in Zen mode and I'm on pain meds, so, you know.
Oh, that's sick. All right. I'll get to it, but one thing first. I just want to say I had to finally get on Patreon. All right. I've been watching you guys for like probably a year. I've watched Atheist Experience back when I was younger, blah, blah, blah. And so I want you guys to know I do appreciate you, but I'm not an atheist, you know, so I just want to say that.
Well, what is it about? So I guess it'd be, first thing is we can make a distinction between pantheism and panentheism, where pantheism is essentially the belief that the universe is co-equal with God, and panentheism is that the universe is a container, that God is a container for the universe, I guess.
Yeah, sure. I can just lay it out in the way you usually prefer people to, but they never do. So give me
cool. That'd be awesome.
Okay, it's like
I'm not used to that, Jay. You're throwing me a curveball.
It's okay. You had a rough few calls here, dude. I mean, literally, it was like, dang, some of these guys are just. Sometimes when you got to be a massive morality discussions. Yeah, it was kind of crazy. Anyway,
go for it.
All right. So my belief is that God is like the membrane of our universe, surrounding us and connected in a manner of phospholipid layers, such as like divinity. That's what I would consider like divinity in comparison. Beyond that, I am not sure. But I think that we are a society. We as a society should take this belief because it does not harm anyone and is at least plausible to a point of falsifiability that can cause society to focus on being human.
Okay, you used a word and didn't really give detail, and that was divinity. What are you saying is divinity? Because when you say God is like the membrane of our universe and the universe is divided into layers, and like, did you say divinity was one of them or something like that?
Yeah, so it was the comparison. So like a phospholipid layer is how the membrane connects to the inner cell. And so like God being the actual membrane itself, the outer protection of the universe, connects through like a phospholipid layer. I don't know what it is called yet. I mean, I would suspect something of the matter of dark matter or along those lines. I haven't read anything like that, but I actually started from this with Krauss. I know you're a philosophy guy. Do you know him pretty well?
I toured with him until Sam and I kicked him off the tour. Yeah, I know Krauss.
Oh, not Lawrence Krauss. I'm a big fan of him too, though. I mean, I wish he didn't get canceled like he did, dude. It was kind of stupid. I read his nothing from something. It was really.
You think it was stupid to cancel him, or it was stupid that he did something to get canceled?
Probably both. I think that both could apply there. Two things can be true.
So you think people who are, run around groping people should just be allowed to continue?
Absolutely not. But I think
then why would it be stupid to cancel somebody for groping someone? Like if somebody's groped
no,
people.
I think I meant it more in an unfortunate manner. Like it is unfortunate that he did those things to be
back to this. Let's get back to this. So
yeah, no problem.
You say God is like the membrane to the universe, but you still haven't given me a definition of divinity that makes any sense. But are you just saying divinity is the label you're putting on the ability for God to communicate with what's inside the membrane?
Correct. Like I'm just using like a religious phrase to make it make sense, but I don't actually believe we've discovered it yet.
Well, if we haven't discovered it yet and you don't know what it is, why do you believe it's there?
Because of the Christopher Ostreicher in 2007. I read the paper in my mythology and literature course, and it kind of blew me away. And so this is where the thoughts started presenting themselves. And it brings an abstract from chaos theory, where even like zero can actually become an exponent of a very large cause. And I really was intrigued by that.
Yeah, it sounds like you found a whole bunch of stuff you don't understand and have tried to turn it into something that you can at least stick a pin in. But if you don't understand it, how can you believe it?
I think that we don't even understand reality most of the time. It's just
okay,
like
Jay, if we're going to have a conversation where you dismiss reality entirely, why would I keep talking to you?
That's a fair assessment.
Cool. So let's get back. You said you're convinced that God is like the membrane. Why? Why do you think there is a membrane? Why would you call it God?
Because I do believe that there is proof of pantheism, such as the membrane of the universe with dark matter and chaos theory. But I understand you said I don't understand those things. I've used them for probably 5-6 years. But
Jay, you just said that there's proof of a membrane.
Well, mathematically, yes.
Where is this proof? Where is this proof of a membrane? And what's the justification for calling this proven membrane God?
Well, if we go, the thing is, it's in the paper that I had mentioned from 2007.
Jay,
and I was intrigued by that, and I researched it further.
Jay, if you're not able to present this, then I don't know how we can have a conversation.
Fair enough. I tried to use some logical terms and definitions. If that's the way.
No, you didn't.
Perceived,
no, you didn't.
Really
no, you didn't.
Okay.
You sprayed gobbledygook and then said it was based on you being intrigued with a paper. That's not logic and defining terms.
Well, I think you can use logic to create an abstract.
I think you can use logic. I don't think you did use logic.
Okay. If that's the opinion, I respect you a lot, and I will take that into consideration. I will work on the definitions and come back. I appreciate your time.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, there's going to be basic questions that get asked every time we do anything like this, which is, okay, you want to say God is the membrane of the universe. Well, I'm not aware that the universe has a membrane. Jay seems to think that it's a proven fact referencing dark matter, which isn't even a proven fact or understood thing. But it seems like there's some sort of abstract concept of a universe, and you've just added a membrane to it with no justification. Well, I used logic and terms. No, you didn't. A logical argument, a valid syllogism, has a particular structure to it, a major premise, minor premise, connecting terms that lead to a conclusion. If those terms exist and are properly aligned such that you have a valid syllogism, then true premises necessarily lead to a true conclusion. But we may not have access to truth. So the real key is that if you accept the premises of a valid, structured argument, you must accept the conclusion. Otherwise, you are no longer in accordance with logic. Simply saying, I read a paper and I found it intriguing, and from that I inferred that the universe has a membrane, which I'm going to call God, and label the ability of this God thing to communicate with what's inside the membrane as divinity, when there's zero demonstration that any God has ever communicated with anyone ever in the history of the world. So there's no there. There's no phenomenon that you need to explain. And yet you're trying to explain this communication phenomenon by putting in a label, divinity, that comes from religion that you don't have a definition for. I've had better conversations with AI. Here we go. Final call for today. Web caller, Matthew, BS from California, says you called in 2 weeks ago and talked to Aron Adair. Ooh, Aaron's not here, and I don't know about all that. Matthew, what's going on?
That's so fine. I don't need to talk to Aron again. I had called in 2 weeks ago because I've been on a kind of a long process of deconstructing my beliefs. I started out in a Christian family, not maybe the most fundamentalist Christian family. When I was growing up, my parents presented everything in Christianity as just stories. And at some point around the age of 10, I realized that everyone else around me wasn't necessarily viewing it as just stories, and they actually believed all these things. And I couldn't really understand how they could. There's so many things in the stories that seemed to me as just they obviously weren't reality. So I'm not a Christian. I'm not in any particular religion, but I do believe that there is some sort of God being a intelligent thing that created everything else. So 2 weeks ago, I called in because I had my own version of the teleological argument for God, and I was pretty convinced that it worked. And he tore it apart pretty badly. I've been thinking about it for the last 2 weeks and have to acknowledge that didn't work. And it kind of threw me for a loop. It bothered me more than I thought it would, that this thing that I kind of thought was pretty sound wasn't. So I've been considering whether I actually believe at this point. And answer is yes, I do still suspect there's a God, but I can't claim it with certainty because I don't have like evidence I can provide for you. So it would be wrong for me to claim certainty.
Certainty's irrelevant, Matthew.
Right. No, I agree. I agree. I just wanted to clarify that.
I don't think that we can be certain about anything. But you said that you're still convinced that there's some sort of intelligent creator, and I said why?
I think it's most likely, and honestly, I think the only thing I'm down. It's either the case that there does exist a God or there does not exist a God. I don't think there's
Matthew, stop.
Clear...
Matthew, stop.
Okay, go ahead.
Listen to me. I've now asked 3 times why you believe that there's an intelligent creator, and your response has been, I think it's most likely, and it's either the case that there is or there isn't. What I want to know is, why are you convinced that there is an intelligent creator? I guarantee you, I don't need the basics of, well, there is or there isn't. I know that really well.
I apologize.
So
I was trying to lay out the case.
I just need
really
to know why.
Comes down to a suspicion. It comes down to an intuition on my part.
Okay. So you have an intuition or a suspicion.
Right.
That there's an intelligent creator.
Right.
Okay. Outside of this intelligent creator, what other beliefs do you have that you're aware of that are founded on a similar intuition or suspicion?
I think we use our intuition all the time. That's a good question. It's hard to give a clear example. This seems like a very different kind of thing than most other things in my life. Like,
Yeah.
if I'm considering my belief that, I don't know, that like Europe exists, well, I can like point to evidence of that, but here I'm considering a thing that wouldn't be a part of the universe. I don't know how I would give a comparison to that. It seems like not only do I not have evidence either way on this thing, I don't even know how I would.
Yeah.
I
Well,
hope
here's
that makes
a
sense.
question. What makes you think
I'm not
that?
trying to dodge you. I hope that's clear.
I get it. I just listen. What makes you think that beyond the universe is even a cogent concept?
I don't know that it is.
Yeah, I don't either. And so when somebody tells me they believe in a God or they intuit a God that is beyond the universe, that makes zero sense to me. I have no understanding of how someone can think there's something beyond the universe or that they can know anything about it. Or do you think, Matthew, that you would have this intuition if you didn't live in a world where people were constantly claiming that there was a God who was beyond space and time?
It's possible I wouldn't. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, I'm in the United States. You're in the United States. We both know that even though I'm in an area that has probably less religion than a lot of the rest of the country, it's still most of the people I work with, most of my friends, most of my family, all believe in God. I know how human bias works. I know I'm not immune to that. So it's possible.
For me, like, there are things, I think our intuition can be trained. Carl Sagan used to talk about kind of training your BS detector. There were some really cool parts in science as a candle in the dark, and his thoughts on that. But if I'm using my intuition when there's actual data, would we agree that that's a mistake, that it'd probably be better to rely on the data?
Yeah, I agree with that. That's
Cool.
clear to me. If you have evidence to a clear general principle, if it overrides your intuition, you should not ignore the evidence.
What about if we're asking a question about something that seems untestable, unfalsifiable, and therefore we can't have data? Should we even have a position on it? Why would it be okay to use your intuition then?
I feel like having a position is unavoidable. Like,
Really?
even uncertain.
How much money do I have in my wallet? How much money do I have in my wallet right now?
I don't know, but if you made me bet on it, there's certain odds I would take and certain odds that I wouldn't.
Yeah, but you're not required to bet on it, are you? Because if you are, I'll bet you.
Well, I know that we're not.
If you think you're required, if you think you are required to bet on it, and that it's not possible to not have a position, then I'll bet you $20,000 on on how much money is in my wallet, and we can do an over and under. I can figure out what the odds are, all that stuff. Do you think you actually have to have a position?
Well, I was thinking of more of like a hypothetical wager. Like if you
it is hypothetical.
Like,
I'm not actually going to bet you $20,000.
Right.
I don't have $20,000.
I get that. Yeah.
We could sell my house and I still wouldn't have $20,000.
But right. Well, so if you present to me something like, you say I have $120 in my wallet, obviously I don't know if that's the case or not, but there's some hypothetical odds that I would take there, even if I'm not a betting man. Like if you made me bet on it 50-50, I don't know, I'd have to think about it. Maybe I would take it, maybe I wouldn't. It seems like there's an implicit level of certainty there, even if we don't take an explicit position.
Why do you feel that the question, is there a God, is something that you cannot answer with, I don't know?
Oh, I think I can answer that with I don't know.
Well,
I mean,
see, this is where I'm really confused, Matthew, because you just said it's not possible to not have a position. And then you've come in with, is there a God? And you're saying, I don't know, which is my answer.
right, but even if you say you don't know, you still would fall somewhere in the middle of not excluding either option. And even if you're in the middle, if I don't know exactly what odds I'd put on it, but if you offered me 20-to-1 odds, well, maybe I'd take that. And if it was the other way around, I wouldn't. So my belief would be somewhere in the middle, would it not? Maybe I'm not explaining myself too well. I can say the reason I called in is that I have been trying to deconstruct my beliefs, and as soon as I realized that this belief I've had for a very long time was not based on something as solid as I thought it was, it does worry me. So I'm trying to explore
This is
that.
why I asked from the beginning, what other positions you're going to...
I can answer that clearly now. I don't believe anything else based on that, I don't think.
Sure. So wouldn't that make this special pleading, which would be logically fallacious?
I mean, I'm not unfamiliar with special pleading, but could you just give me a definition of that again, just so I know I'm on the same page?
Sure. To say that it would be a mistake for me to use intuition to determine questions of supreme importance, except for the God question, then it's okay to use intuition. That's special pleading. You're making an exception for the God question that you don't make for other things. Like,
Yeah.
If you're driving down the highway, how do you know that a brick wall isn't going to materialize directly in front of your car out of nowhere?
Well, I don't. It's just very unlikely. I've studied
How unlikely is it?
To know that.
How unlikely is it?
Extraordinarily unlikely. Like an extraordinarily small
is it
number.
more? Is it more or less likely than a God existing?
It seems to me less likely, as I don't think I could give you a accounting for that.
It's less likely that a brick wall will materialize in front of you on the highway than that a God exists. How did you determine that it's less likely?
I don't think I have a good argument for that.
Well, when you figure out how to tell which one's actually less likely,
so
I'm here for it.
Yeah, you brought up the special pleading thing, and I have to agree. I think you're right on that. I think I'm being inconsistent.
You've got a category of things. You have a category of one thing that you're okay using your intuition on. And you just gave an example of, even though you didn't calculate it, I'm not suggesting you have to calculate the probability, that your God is more likely than a brick wall materializing. But we have no evidence and no way to investigate the likelihood of either of those. And so you've taken two things that we can't investigate and don't have evidence for and cannot calculate the probability of, and you've determined that one of them is more probable than another. That, to me, is indicative of a problem with thinking. Not that it's necessarily intuition, but somewhere in there's an error.
Yeah, you're right. I'm being inconsistent. The thing is, though, like when I tell you I still think that there's a God, I'm just trying to be honest there. Like it's a fact of the matter that I think that, but you're right. I don't have a good argument for it. I'm not trying to dodge that.
I didn't say you were.
I've called in and both arguments haven't worked.
Trust me, I didn't say you were. I don't think you are. I'm telling you what you asked for. I'm giving you what my thoughts are on this justification for your intuition. I don't have any problem with you. I think it's been a perfectly, I got no problems with this call at all. You haven't got my blood pressure up at all. I realize I'm in Zen mode mostly today, but no, There's no problem here. You don't have to tell me that you're not trying to dodge anything. I can tell when somebody's honestly having a conversation, and you are.
You know, one of the things that's frustrated me throughout my life, including when I was about 8 years old, trying to talk to people about things, is most people actually pretend to agree with you. And it's incredibly frustrating because I know I disagree with people about things, and you'll talk to them about like something like God, and they'll be like, "Oh, that's okay. You know, you're still within this big tent." And it's like, that's all nice and all, but it's actually, I feel like, more polite when people actually push back, because I know we don't agree.
Yeah.
And you said that's fine. It's actually extremely frustrating.
Well, I can empathize, because for 20 years I've been sitting here frustrated with the same people that you're frustrated with, and some people you're not frustrated with. So think some more on that, Matthew, and feel free to give me a call back sometime. We'll dig in more on post-intuition, maybe.
Yeah, I intend to call back again, maybe next week, maybe more if it takes more time to think about it.
Whatever you need, man. I will have happy, confused conversations with people till the day I'm dead, probably.
Okay, I appreciate it, Matt. You have a great name too, by the way. Just saying.
Yes, I kind of wish I didn't, considering that, it's biblical origins and the irony there. But actually, I'm okay with it. My middle name, for those who don't know, is Wade, W-A-D-E. And when I was a little kid, I fucking hated that name. That's not a name. That's something you do in a creek, because, I'm literalist kid like that. And then there was a movie, I think it was Roadhouse, with Patrick Swayze, and I think Sam Elliott played Wade Garrett, maybe. And he was, he's Sam Elliott. He's fucking cool as hell. And all of a sudden I was like, I don't want to be Matthew anymore. I want to be Wade. I want to go by my middle name. I have friends that go by their middle name. Let me go by my middle name. And you can't pick your own nickname once people know who you are. So,
yeah. Do you know if you'll be on next week or when you'll be on next?
Morgan, do you know if I'm scheduled for next Sunday? I think so.
Schedule isn't out yet, but I would assume so.
Schedule isn't out yet, but we assume so.
Right. I'll make an effort to call in then and think about it in the meantime.
Thanks, Matthew. I'll talk to you later.
All right. Thank you.
See, there's the difference. He goes by Matthew. I go by Matt. Oh, somebody in chat was like, thought you'd be taller. Yep, there's a line right there. Hey, look, we've had a fun day. Erika had to leave a little early, but we managed to get a couple calls in after that. I think my Zen mostly held out. I definitely did not make Erika look like the bad cop of the two of us. But apart from, somebody picking today of all days to suggest that I'm an incredible jerk, while I was making extreme efforts to be nowhere near that. Yes, I'm fully aware that I can be perceived as a jerk, and I can be a jerk when I want to. Part of the point was that I want to have good conversations with people, and I'll try just about anything to make sure that happens. But I don't think the conversations that went well today, I don't think they would have gone any better or worse based on my mood. It's about the caller, and the calls that didn't go particularly well today, I don't know that they'd have gone much worse. They could have gone a little bit worse if I was in a funky mood or whatever else. But it's important that even after decades of doing this, I continue to review what I do, and like many other people, trying to change and get better at things. And the nature of call-in shows has changed, in part because of what I've done. I have built some of the monster that is problematic for me. But a good chunk of the problem happens to be technical, with the delay and the fact that we're doing everything voice over IP. For years, we just had a regular telephone. I'd love if we could just get back to using telephones, but we may not be able to. In the meantime, let me tell you what's coming up on the network for the rest of the week, including tonight. Skeptalk is going to be tomorrow at 6 p.m. Central with Shannon and Paul. Chewed Gum will be 6 p.m. on Tuesday with Alyssa and Eve. Hang Up will be myself and Will Judy at 6 p.m. on Wednesday. Sense of Trend, 6 p.m., 6 p.m., 6 p.m. Then Thursday's the day where we screw it all up. The Transatlantic Call-In Show is at 2 o'clock. That may move around depending on the schedules of other people. But right now it's 2 o'clock with Arden and Alexander. But coming up here in 2.5 hours, less than 2.5 hours, Seth Andrews will be sitting alongside Eve. Eve was framed. And they will be engaged in the Sunday show After Dark. So for the people who we took calls from, who had thoughts about why they believe but couldn't quite pin it down, if you've come up with something by 7 o'clock, by all means, call in and talk to them. Let them know. Maybe they'll ask you different questions. Maybe they will ask some of the same questions, and you'll get a chance to potentially answer those. This network runs on a lot of people. Huge thank you to Jimmy Snow for putting all this together, to Morgan for producing the show today, and to Arden for producing the show the rest of the time, to all of our moderators in chat, keeping things at least as civil as we can, and to our call screeners. But most of all, to everybody who watched and participate, who called in, who had questions, and who tried to have a good conversation. That's what we want. We'd love to understand it. I am confused on a regular basis by people who believe things that they don't understand. There's a reason Stevie Wonder in the song Superstition wrote, when you believe in things you don't understand and you suffer. Well, it seems that some of you aren't suffering enough, and so you must call and pass the suffering on to me, because you know how much it frustrates me to not understand how you can believe something while simultaneously suggesting that there's no good way to know that it's true. In the meantime, go to linemerch.com to find out, to add your support for when we get demonetized. You can go to PayPal, not PayPal.com. You can go to patreon.com/calltheline, paypal.me/Mr. Atheist, and all the rest of those links are down there in the description. So please take care of yourself. Tune in tonight for the Sunday show After Dark. We'll see you later. There's Erika. Put up a picture of Erika. I can do that.